February 4th, 2020 meeting of the Carson City Parks and Recreation Commission. Happy New Year, everybody. Madam Secretary, will you call roll?
Chairperson Kiefer.
Here.
Vice Chair Cartwright.
Here.
Commissioner Bagwell.
Here.
Commissioner Meyer.
Here.
Commissioner Whitefield.
Here.
Commissioner Caldwell.
Here.
Commissioner Wilkes McCulloch. A quorum is present.
All right. Pardon? All right. Public comments. This is the opportunity where members of the public who wish, yes, Jen. Where members of the public who wish to address the commission may have an opportunity to do so, and these are generally items that are not on the agenda, but if they do require in-depth discussion, we can agendize them. Are there any members of the public wish to make comments? Jen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I just wanted to take a quick moment to introduce our new Deputy District Attorney, Mihaela Niagos, and she's filling in for Ben Johnson. So Ben has been reassigned to other boards and commissions. We're happy to have her here. And then I also wanted to introduce Danielle Howard. She'll be our recording secretary from now on instead of Tamar.
Welcome, both of you. We really don't bite, so you don't have to be scared. All right.
We might dunk her in
Oh,
a swimming pool.
would Kurt help with that?
No horseplay.
Ooh, so stern. Yeah. All right, let's move on to agenda item 1 for possible action on the approval of minutes from our October 1st, 2019 meeting. Has everybody had an opportunity to read the minutes? Any corrections or additions?
Ready for a motion?
We're ready for a motion.
Okay, I move to approve the minutes of October 1, 2019.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Great, thank you, guys.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I need to abstain from that vote. I wasn't present.
Okay. Okay. All right, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4 of us with 2 abstentions, correct? Okay. All right, thanks for pointing that out, ladies. We appreciate that. Okay, modifications to the agenda. Are there any modifications that anybody wishes? Jen?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. We'd like to remove item 3E from the agenda, the Kings Canyon Trailhead. We've asked the Central Federal Lands to give us more refined drawings so we can have a better discussion, especially for the public. So we'd like that to either be at April if they'll be ready, and if not, it would be the June meeting with open space.
Thanks for letting us know. We appreciate that.
I was wondering where those guys were. I'm looking at their.
They're ghosting us.
So we won't have it at RTC this month either. We'll postpone that a little bit until we can get just a little better drawings with the grades, and it's really not a true 70% drawing.
Okay.
Is that coming to the open space also?
We were going to go to open space also this month, but it'll probably go in April instead. And if it's not ready in April, we'll discuss it at the joint meeting in June.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Item 3A for discussion only, introduction of the new Parks and Recreation Commission members, Janice Caldwell and Stacy Wilk McCulloch. Jen, I believe you're doing the honors on this?
I think you just did. We have 2 new members. So thank you. Welcome to Janice. Janice was wonderful. She came in the office last week. We tried to give her kind of a quick orientation to the department and all that we do, and she's very familiar with all the parks, and she's an avid user and very passionate. I'm sure she'll be a welcome addition. I don't see Stacy here yet tonight, so we'll try to get in touch with her and make sure she gets oriented before the next meeting.
Stacy's taking Commissioner Cassiopo's place?
Correct. She's appointed from the school board.
Any public comment on this item? All right, we're moving on to another discussion-only item, acknowledgement of appreciation for Park Commissioners Brett Long and Joe Cassiopo for their years of service. Jen?
Thank Thank you, Madam Chair, and feel free to jump in, any of you. I really appreciate Brett and Joe. They've been so passionate, and they're always so appreciative of staff. They have the greatest perspective. They're very positive. They're just so passionate about the park system, especially the trail system, and we have a little gift for both of them. Hopefully Joe can get here soon, and we'll make sure he gets his present as well. But we've got a great picture of the Ash to Kings Trail. I'll hold it up so you guys can all see it. But it's a great photo, and just a little token of our appreciation for all that they've done for us and for the staff.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, the record will reflect that Commissioner Wilkes McCulloch is here. And Jen, thank you for that. We really appreciate it. Brett, come on up.
Oh, yeah, you didn't get to hide.
You don't get to hide.
Oh, we need Rachel to take.
Yeah, where's somebody to take a picture?
Picture, where we could all come down and have a picture with them to post.
Joe.
Yeah, let's come down and do a picture.
All right, does anybody wish to make a comment or bid Brett a fond farewell? Kurt? Brett? You may make a comment, but I wanted to say thank you. When I first came on the board, you were very kind and you showed me the ropes and you never made me feel as though I were asking stupid questions, and I really appreciate that.
Thanks. I always ask stupid questions, so. But no, it's been a great experience. I joined the Parks and Rec mainly just because I wanted to be involved and wanted to understand the process and what's involved with the public. It was a great learning experience for me. A few of the key things I guess that happened during my time was the Mac Center was kind of through the middle to the end of the design and then the completion, and now we're using it. So that's pretty exciting. The Ash to King and the mapping of all the trails and working with the Eagle Valley Trail Committee and everything was a huge one. So we have that going. I know that there's a lot more to be done there. And then I think the collaboration between Parks and Rec and the open space was huge also. I think, I feel like over the last few years, we've been able to align quite a bit. And I know rather than fighting for different grants, we work together to make sure that we were able to get grants that maybe neither of us would have had if it weren't for that. So it's been a great time, and I appreciate everybody else's support as well.
Lori?
So I just want to put on the record how much we appreciated you, and you're never gone. Oh, I'll at you.
All right, any public comment on this item? All right, let's move on to Item 3C for possible action, discussion and possible action to elect a chair and vice chair of the Parks and Recreation Commission for the 2020 calendar year. Jennifer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. So this would be a one-year appointment. Currently, we have Leanne Keever as the chair, and then Leah Cartwright as the current vice chair. So it's at the pleasure of the commission if you would like to nominate someone new or a new slate.
Okay, I move to appoint Leanne Keever as the chair and Kurt Meyer as the vice chair.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion carries. Kurt, welcome aboard.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Those
You're
two-
supposed to say she can never be sick.
Oh,
That's what comes with it.
no, I was just going to ask,
You do a wonderful job.
what-
well, I was going to ask, when would you like me to call in sick? So you could.
We'll talk about that off the record.
Okay. All right. All right, thank you, everybody. Appreciate the honor you've given me again. Any public comment on this item? All right. Exactly. Anyway, on to agenda item 3D for possible action, discussion and possible action to approve the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting schedule for the year 2020. Jen, again, you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You're going to get sick of me tonight. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. This item is just to approve the meeting schedule for the current year. The Open Space Advisory Board has already approved this schedule with the joint meetings. This is the same one, basically, that we had as last year. The only sort of anomaly is the August meeting. We don't have the first meeting of the month because it's National Night Out here at Mills Park. And as you know, we have huge parking conflicts, and it was very difficult to hold a meeting with that same activity. So that's the odd one out in August.
Any comments on this? The schedule looks good to me.
I just know I won't be here for the June one.
Okay, thank you for letting us
I've
know.
already paid for a trip.
Are you not taking us?
I didn't know you all then.
Oh, all right, we'll let that one slide. All right, if there's no discussion, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Oh, I'm sorry, public comment on this? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the 2020 meeting schedule.
I move to approve the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting schedule for 2020.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. The motion carries. All right, so we will be meeting April 7th, June 15th, which is a joint meeting with the Open Space Advisory Committee, August 18th, October 6th, and December 1st, which is also a joint meeting with the Open Space Advisory Committee. All right, thank you for. All right, we're moving on to agenda item 3F. For discussion only, the Park Program of the Month presentation regarding the Homestead Holidays by Dan Earp. Dan, before we start, I want to tell you how much we enjoyed that. That was just one of the best holiday festivities that we had this year.
All right, well, thank you for that, Madam Chair. I could skip a few slides now. For the record, Dan Arp, Recreation Superintendent, and I know we have a long night ahead of us, so we'll try and cover this pretty quickly. Just want to show some pictures, mostly, of our event, but we did have a new holiday event this year. So just as a reminder, the Recreation Division, we decided a couple years ago to try and start doing some more community events, family-friendly events. And so we weren't really doing anything that was holiday-related. And so we came up with this idea to showcase one of our unique open space properties out at Silver Saddle Ranch, because we thought it was just a cool and unique property that we have in Carson City. And we thought it'd kind of be a fun way to do kind of an old old-fashioned, rustic-themed holiday event out there. So that's why we titled it Homestead Holidays, to fit the theme of being out there on the ranch. And so before I get too far, I just want to thank all the sponsors that we had. I'm not going to list them all out, but we had a lot of community support for this that helped us to get the funds that we needed to throw these events together, because we do all these events that through sponsorships and donations, so that we don't actually use anything from the general fund to throw on these events for the community. So they're all funded separately. So huge shout out to our sponsors. So mostly just kind of filling out the activities that we planned, and we'll go through these quickly, but we did have live music each night of the event. We set up a stage and a tent for them, so we had 3 bands. And we also did Letters to Santa. That was sponsored by Carson Now, where kids could either bring letters that we sent out through the school district to the event and put them in a mailbox out there, or we had them on hand that they could fill out while they're waiting in line to see Santa. And then Carson Now published all the letters that we got in Carson Now the week before Christmas. So that was kind of a fun thing for them to do. And then the Friends of Silver Saddle Ranch, they did wagon rides. Yeah, yes, for sure. Very popular activity to do, and I thought their wagon looked pretty neat. We couldn't really fit the theme any better than that. So obviously we had photos with Santa inside the Red House at Silver Saddle, and our Santa was very gracious to sit all 3 nights, and a lot of children on his knee, and he was a volunteer from the Antique Power Club that had a Santa suit and was willing to come and volunteer for all 3 nights to do that. And then Kiwanis took care of the food for us as a fundraiser for Kiwanis. So they did mostly chili-themed food, so chili burgers, chili dogs, chili fries, really healthy stuff. But it was good, and it was warm. Well, the food was warm because it was cold outside, so it was really nice. What was that? Chili night, yep. So, and I know Kiwanis was really grateful because they said it was one of the biggest fundraisers that they've had in many years when I did a presentation with them afterwards. So they felt like they did really well and want to do it again next year. We also had free hot chocolate and apple cider. We had a few little fire pits around to keep you warm because it was pretty chilly, especially on Sunday night. And then we also have craft stations for the kids to make ornaments. This one is where they're painting, and the older kids, that they actually got to do the ornaments with wood burning. That was pretty popular. I know Jen and her children spent most of their time there. And then we mostly just tried to do decorations. So if you don't want to participate in any of the activities, you could just walk around and hope that it was decorated enough that people felt it was festive. So we put about 10,000 feet of lights up. It sounds like a lot, but it's a big space. So it was really just like a couple rows everywhere we went. And we also had the Antique Power Club that had about, I think, 8 tractors, antique tractors that they decorated, which I thought was really cool. And they hung out the whole time and chatted to everybody who wanted to come look at the tractors. And then to fit the kind of old-fashioned theme, we didn't want to go buy a whole bunch of cheesy decorations. So as much as possible, everything was handcrafted by our recreation staff. So we made the trees and the signs and the snowmen and everything that we put out there. So just some stats. Our estimated attendance overall, and this is guessing here based off of cars and everything else, but we estimated about 1,800 people over the whole weekend. Friday was our slowest day at 250 people. It was rainy, so we're glad that people came at all. And then Saturday was very busy with approximately 1,000 people. And then Sunday we had about 600 people, which is typically what we would expect as far as Friday being the slower day, Saturday being the busiest day, and Sunday being somewhere in between. And Sunday was very cold that night. I think it was already dropping down in the 20s by the time the event was over. So the fires were very utilized. So just real quick, it was a great event. We had a lot of fun putting it together, but it was also, out of all the events we've done, the most challenging by far. We came up with the idea of doing it out there, and then we realized how difficult of a choice that was, because there's pretty much no light out there whatsoever. Eric Klug and I, after the October Parks and Rec Commission meeting, we went out to Silver Saddle to see how dark it was at night in October, just so we can kind of have an idea what our challenge was. And it's pitch black. I mean, so we had to bring in a lot of artificial light to try and make it so that it was safe and people could see. There's very limited power to do all the lights, so we had to bring in generators. Obviously a new event and a very expensive event with getting all the lights and things that we needed. So reaching out, getting a lot of sponsors to get the funding that we needed. And it took more marketing than we've done before. There's a lot of people who didn't know where Silver Saddle is. So we tried some new techniques, which was good for us to learn. The main one being every door direct mail, which we've never used before. But we did like a postcard that we could select into certain neighborhoods that we had postcards sent to those neighborhoods to advertise the event. And then obviously weather, you just never know what you're going to get in December. So luckily, I think all things considered, the weather was as good as we could have hoped for, other than maybe that Friday night. And then there's also facility environmental concerns. It is a very historic and protected facility, so there were some concerns about us putting lights up, so we had to be cautious about how we did that. And so on all the houses, we used gutter clips, and then we also, anything that had corrugated roofs, we had to use binder clips, which actually worked really well, but we didn't do anything permanent to any building, which worked really well, and it held up even with the winds and everything that we had. So if you're looking for a great way to hang Christmas lights, binder clips, who knew, right? Parking obviously is a big challenge. So there's an arena out there that we use for parking, and we estimate that it can probably fit about 150 cars or so to 200 cars, and we definitely hit that capacity Saturday night. And so we had alternative parking set up elsewhere to have a shuttle provided, which in case that was needed. So that was a big issue, is just trying to make sure we can meet the needs. And that's why we spread it out over 3 nights to begin with, so that it wasn't hit too hard on one night. We don't want to cause too much damage to the roads. Everything's dirt roads out there, so we want to make sure we're not, as Jen says, loving it too much. And then there's also some concerns brought to us about, there's some owl sightings in some of those big cottonwood trees in the main courtyard. So making sure that we were aware of that, and we met with the open space staff and discussed where the owls were, or at least where we believe that they were, and making sure that when we put the big light towers that we brought out, angling those in a way that they were not directly shining on any of the trees and impacting the owl's habitat as much as possible. So trying to make sure that we're keeping that in mind as well. So overall, we were really excited about the event. We thought it was great. We want to do it again. We already have met as a recreation staff and discuss what we need to do differently next year. There's definitely need for more activities to do. There's a lot of people who are standing around waiting in line for the wagon rides particularly, so a few more things to keep people entertained in the courtyard and elsewhere. Like most events, it's probably going to grow next year, so making sure that we just have a really solid plan for parking and how we handle that. And then we also thought it'd be really nice. A lot of people weren't familiar with Silver Saddle Ranch. Most of them had never been there, the people that we talked to, or if they had, they felt like they couldn't go into the main ranch area because they thought that was like private, and they stayed on the trail. So some historical or interpretive element where somebody can kind of talk about the history of Silver Saddle, we think would be nice to include. As Lori pointed out, we need even more decorations, so more lights. And then obviously, if the weather is looking like it's going to be not great, then our plan for how we want to manage that, so that we have a plan. But overall, we enjoy the event. We're reaching out to have people tell us what they want to hear and or what they'd like to see different next year. And if there's any questions or comments, we'd like to hear about it.
Commissioner Whitfield?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On your direct mail effort, marketing campaign, did you have people bring those cards back so you had some measure of how effective it was?
We did not. That's a great idea, but no, we didn't. We could probably do something. We did something like that with the school district as far as the letters to Santa format was a little bit different on that one. So if we got that letter, we know that it came from the school and not just one that they got from us. But yeah, we could probably do something like that with the mail.
Question. You're looking for homemade decorations next year? What about involving maybe some of the school kids and having them do the decorations,
Yeah, I'll take the note of that.
The little guys guys like to do the wheel and pace. Any other questions or comments?
Could even have some fun and even do maybe the Park and Rec Commission or something, or the foundation, maybe we can give a prize for the best homemade Santa or snowman
I
or
like that idea.
some
yeah.
little
A
thing
contest.
a little contest, and on the Sunday at the end, it's first place is this one or something, I don't know. Just to, like you said, add a little flavor to the
We always like
process.
a little competition, so that's always fun.
But it's just fun, and you can have it for each grade level or something,
Exactly.
just something fun.
Right.
Especially homemade, though.
Exactly. Any other questions or comments from the commission? Commissioner
I will
Bedwell?
just comment how much I enjoyed it, and I thought it was wonderful for the community to get to see a park that took a lot of work for us to get to, and I really want to appreciate the Friends of Silver Saddle Ranch, too. It takes a lot of volunteer hours and a lot of work by everybody to make these things happen. And so I just want to say kudos to everyone, and I hope that we can keep it as an annual event and that we can just grow it a little bit, and maybe even, if you needed to, hook it with Silver and Snowflakes at some time. And, we really kick off like the month of December as a celebration in Carson City or something. I don't know. Just, again, overall thoughts that I'd like to just celebrate maybe they can have something every weekend going on, because we do the first weekend, the first Friday or something is Silver and Snowflakes. And I don't know, maybe we can just schedule things out that just keep it going. But great job, you guys. Great job.
Thank you.
Excellent job. All right. Any public comment on this? Come on down. Introduce yourself and tell us what's on your mind, sir.
Uriah Wise, Carson City resident. Hi, Lori. Sorry I failed to make it for open public comment, but this will tie into the presentation. So I just want to give thank you to the Parks and Rec staff and the employees for their dedication to the community to make life better for the families and children of the community. We attended the Silver Saddle Ranch, thought it was awesome, great idea. Little bit of a issue with parking, getting out there on Friday night, but we improvised, found an open spot and made it back. So kids had a blast, met Santa. It was wonderful. Tying into that, also I want to thank the organization and their sponsors for the ski program. I meant to get here, but being with Public Works, I don't get off work till 5:30, so I apologize. My daughter is able to take part in some of the wonderful events that their organization has been striving to fulfill the community needs with children and things other than just video games and homework. And I just wanted to say thank you to Dan, thank you to Jen, Dave, everybody at Parks and Rec, the commission, for allowing them to provide those opportunities for the children of the community to give them something outdoors and more fulfilling than just video games and movies. So thank you.
Thank you for those comments. We appreciate them. Any other public comments? All right. Hearing none, let's move on to our next item, possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors on fiscal year 2020, 2021 Capital Improvement Program budget request and priorities for the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Department. Jen, Dave, want to?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now the real fun begins. Budgets, my favorite time of year. So you have some late material. I'm going to point out your late material before we move on with this item, just so I make sure that you have everything in front of you and you're looking at the right documents. So you should have another big packet like that. That will be for this item here. So right now, we're going to talk about the capital portion of the department's budget. Not going to talk about services and supplies or operating or staffing needs right now, just basically on our infrastructure, our equipment, and our rolling stock and fleet. That's what our focus is for this one. Last year, our top priorities from the commission, I just want to remind you, were safety issues, including ADA improvements, infrastructure preservation, aquatics facility upgrades, park maintenance equipment, playground safety, and theater improvements were your priorities from last year, just as a reminder. Also, major capital projects are considered to be anything over $5,000, and minor requests are under $5,000. We still have to go through a process and fill out forms for every single proposal, whether it's a minor or a major proposal as part of our budget. So in your packet, you have the first part is your 5-year capital improvement plan. The second portion of the budget is your fleet, and then the third part is the equipment. So I thought if you wouldn't mind, maybe we could do each section, and then if you have questions, I thought that might be the most methodical. I have Dave and Dan here for questions. They are great. They did so much work to help put this together. But this is the first year you've seen the rolling stock equipment inventory and our fleet inventory. That's new to the department. Previously, we didn't have a really solid inventory of that equipment. Paul Griffiths, Dan Castens, the whole park maintenance team has really worked hard with Rich Hardcastle over in Fleet to make sure we have a good, solid inventory of that equipment. We don't just have one mower, we have a fleet of mowers. We have so much rolling stock that it's just a lot to kind of wrap your head around. So I realize there's pages and pages, and next year we could probably break it down in categories, but I wanted to make sure that you could see all of the equipment that we're responsible for, all that needs to be maintained and planned for and thought out for every year. To give you a couple statistics so you can kind of wrap your head around how much money are we talking about and what's available. In your packet, you have a sheet that has all the colors on it that looks like this. This is what we got last year. So just to give you some context of how much money we got in capital improvement last year, if you combine all the funding sources, we had over $2 million invested into our parks infrastructure last year, which is tremendous. That's the most we've received in, I don't know, more than a decade at least. So that's a really great thing. It does take a lot of different funding sources and a lot of creativity. So you're going to see us trying to move stuff around, and it's a little bit of horse trading. But we have a lot of different funding sources, and each one has their own restrictions. So we need to make sure that we're being legally responsible with how we're spending the city's money and making sure that we're allocating certain things to fit within those requirements. So it can get a little confusing. Stop us at any time and we can try to help you wrap your head around it. It takes us a lot of time to just even put this together. And then I understand, getting this packet, an updated packet at the last minute. We just wanted to make sure that you had the most current numbers, the most current information, because this is a work in progress. So the funding sources that we have are the capital improvement, so the quality of life funds. That's generated from a portion of sales tax. 40% of that is to quality of life capital, so for capital improvements. 40% goes to open space and 20% goes to maintenance. So in that 40% for capital, we're projecting next year that we would have about 1.2 million, I'm rounding numbers, but half of that, about 640,000, will go toward the debt service for the MAC facility. So that won't be paid off until 2030. So it's a 20-year debt service, so it was from 2010 to 2030. So we have a little over $600,000 just for quality of life capital to talk about tonight. And what are the priorities from staff, and what are your recommendations for the priorities from the commission that we want to recommend to the Board of Supervisors? The redevelopment folks, they are wonderful. They've been really supportive. They can only support projects within the redevelopment district. So to give you an example, Mills Park and Fuji Park are within the redevelopment district. There are some other neighborhood parks within those, but those are the two primary parks within that district. Residential construction tax is limited to neighborhood park improvements. It's outlined in Nevada revised statutes, and it can only be on parcels that are 25 acres or less. So a park like Mills Park would not be eligible for residential construction tax, to just give you some kind of guide frames for these funding sources. Quality of life park maintenance, the majority of that is our staffing needs for park maintenance. We are funded also at a general fund and some other sources, but our services and supplies comes out of that. We also have the youth sports account as well that helps us with funding those, but primarily not capital improvements, more of the maintenance perspective. So that's just kind of an overview of that kind of colorful sheet you have and an outline of the funding sources. And this is what was funded last year. So you know what projects, the majority of the projects are either complete or in progress. We have a couple remaining that are just getting going right now, but the majority of them will be completed by the end of the fiscal year. So a lot of reinvestment in our aging park system, which is great. So before I move on, do you guys have any questions about the funding from last year?
Could you give us a timeline as far as how this all plays out, as far as going to the board?
Sure.
And when the board is going to see what we are talking about and how that moves forward?
I'd be happy to. It's sort of a moving target. So yesterday, our capital improvement submittals were actually due. I get your feedback tonight. If there's glaring changes from what your direction is to what staff submitted, we can go back, we can readjust what we submitted to finance and make sure that that's solid. And then in March, we will have a workshop. I have the dates somewhere. March 11th. So that's all the department heads get together and we talk about the capital improvement budget. So the general fund capital improvement budget across the city. And we all kind of, I don't want to say fight for our money, but it's pretty amicable. We all work together. We look at the available funding and then we try to, as a team, make sure that our priorities are in line as a city. And then we hone that in and we talk about fleet and we talk about the infrastructure capital improvements, but just the general fund at that workshop. And then our operating budgets at the April Park Commission meeting, we'll talk about our services and supply budgets, our staffing levels and our operating budgets. And then you can either direct staff or make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, whatever your pleasure is, about what we're going to submit regarding the operating budgets in April. The board will, in April and May, they typically have 2 meetings where they approve the budget. Typically, the first meeting, wherever that's going to fall, I think end of April. Does that sound right, Supervisor Bagwell? Usually either the second meeting in April, the first meeting in May. They'll have a huge all-day budget workshop essentially as the board meeting. So they'll go through everybody's budget, every fund, and talk about that as a board. So that's a great opportunity for park commissioners to show up and attend and share feedback from tonight's meeting and in April about where they want to be. And then the official budget, I think, is also approved in May and then submitted to the state. Does that help? Okay, I know, it's a lot.
I know that's a general outline, but I just.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot, but don't think because we've submitted our initial stuff to finance that can't be changed and that your input does not matter, because it most definitely does. So if you don't mind, I'd like to start with this spreadsheet that was the late material that we handed out. Oops. So that's the 5-year capital plan. So you'll see some items that are highlighted in green. Those were items that we submitted to finance as staff priorities. And then you have the number of the priorities. There's 3 different categories. We have major CIP that we fill out one form, minor CIP. So minor CIPs are those under $5,000 requests. And then we have the luxury of having access to quality of life funding. So we submit quality of life capital requests, and then we submit a request for general fund capital. So the general fund capital, there's only so much available, obviously, in each category, but we're also competing against the other departments. So as a city, you want to kind of put your city hat on. We have police and fire and public works and so many services, health services that we have to provide. So we try to just be really conservative with that general fund CIP and try to get as much as we can possibly into quality of life funding to try to, make sure that we're spreading the wealth across the city. So if you have questions or if you want to, it's divided by park. It's in alphabetical order to walk you through that. And then if there's questions about any of the projects that are listed on there, or if you think there's things that are missing, or if you don't agree with some of the priorities and you think other things should kind of shoot to the top, we're happy to discuss that with you. I know it's a lot to digest, and we'd be happy to walk you through, any questions. I do want you to know of an effort right now. There's a really robust effort. The city has a third-party consultant doing asset management on all of our facilities. So for us, for parks, we have like the aquatic facility, the buildings at Governor's Field, and all the sports complexes. What state is the HVAC system in? What at the pool? How are the filters doing? What is the chemical feeders? And really providing a robust, full report on each of those buildings. And they're going to give us cost estimates that'll end up for next year being folded into this document. This is just based on staff observations, quotes we've received to replace some of this, either of this infrastructure. But next year, you'll see a really robust report about the facilities that we have. So that's underway right now.
I had a question. The Question 18 funding for the Question 18 park maintenance, is that still kind of earmarked for those projects that were actually built by the Question 18? Or has that gone across everything in that department? Did that question make sense?
Yeah, it
Okay,
does.
thanks.
So the quality of life capital funding is very restrictive in which locations and what projects we can put in. In that initial ballot language, it's very specific. It talks about trails, it talks about the rifle range, it talks about basically everything at Mills Park. It talks about the MAC. The MAC was, obviously the debt service comes out of that quality of life capital. We really make sure that every project we have proposed is in line with that. The maintenance pretty much is as well. So that maintenance category focuses on those facilities. You're going to have some overlap, though. You're going to have a mower that's going to go to other parks. You're going to have staff that might work at multiple facilities. We do our best to try to keep it in line, but there is going to be a little bit of overlap, especially in the maintenance category.
Thank you.
So, excuse me, I noticed that it's in green and it's for people following along, third page, I guess. You're putting in as miscellaneous sport court resurfacing. That's for all types. And so you're saying we have 18 sport courts. Is that citywide? And so you're trying now to create, and you want to take it out of Fund 350. So that's residential park construction tax?
Yeah, so for this upcoming fiscal year, it would be for Roscold Park, and that's the residential construction tax, so that park would be eligible for that fund, and that was the recommendation by this board previously when we had the Roscold Park Master Plan update. So that's what that $165,000 is for.
2 tennis courts,
Yes.
is that right?
Correct.
Tennis courts.
But there are many other sport courts throughout the city that need to be addressed, but this is our method, if you will, is to try to do a little bit every year.
Well, what I'm trying to get to on this is, and we're doing some master planning throughout here too on a few of the parks. And so what I'm trying to get us to is our original discussion that we were having of really deciding which places are what types of courts so that we can hone in correctly and really target these dollars and not necessarily only use residential park construction tax. So what I'm interested in is, again, that we were potentially, doesn't mean we didn't make any final decisions, like Ross Gold was going to get the 2 tennis courts, and then Centennial, if I recall, was our discussion for the other tennis courts and then Mills Park, we were going to try and program really towards the pickleball environment. And so I had just noticed that you put this as miscellaneous, and I don't know if it would actually be better to split the courts out and identify them into their proper parks. Because what I don't want lost is that they don't see we're programming certain recreational activities at what parks. And so I just, fleet to me is easy to be 10% per year, we're gonna replace the fleet, but I just don't think we should do that necessarily in sports courts. I think we need to just really bite the bullet and make some decisions here of where we're gonna have what, so that we can have good tennis courts, we can have good pickleball courts, but you're not gonna get everything everywhere. And so I just
We can definitely
pull
put
it apart.
the amenities in the right park.
Right.
We definitely want to do a Mills Park master plan update. That's why we didn't want to get ahead of ourselves
Yes.
and propose a bunch of improvements that might not, the whole picture of that park might change. It might stay the same, but, we need to work with the public and putting that together. We obviously need to get that done. So we knew that, obviously, Roscoe Park, you guys had already
Done that one.
directed that, so we thought this is a great first one, let's get that done. We have the residential construction tax available to fund that anyway. Let's put that in this year, and then we'll look at the other courts. But we can move that to the appropriate park.
It's just, again, I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I just think it will help the public, because I think I'm concerned they won't even recognize it when they look at it under miscellaneous in sport court. I'm thinking I'm gonna get a whole bunch of phone calls as to, I thought we were getting tennis courts. And I'm like, you are, they're at Ross Gold, but it's just a thought.
Well, I think it would also help us if we had them identified that way.
Yeah.
Mr. Meyer?
So when you say sports courts, are you lumping all of the outdoor facilities into that?
So
Or can
sports
that
courts
be
are tennis, basketball, pickleball.
Outside?
everything.
Outdoor
Yep.
only?
Outdoor.
Yes.
Outdoor, okay, outdoor
I think that's
sports.
another.
Got it.
state.
So like,
We'll
for example,
clarify that, and then we'll put the inventory and how many are at each facility within that park. And
That'd
we'll
be-
adjust
that'd be-
this.
I think that would be
that'd be
better.
perfect. And
No
then
problem.
because we know that tennis courts are gonna be more expensive than, say, the basketball court, the new basketball court out at Schultz Rands and things like that, so. Thank
Great,
you.
yeah, great suggestion, thank you.
Okay. I think
Any
now.
other questions or comments?
Are we gonna go through this page by page?
I don't know, Jen,
How did you want to do that? Or just go through and
are you just going to give us an overview?
We can give you an overview if you'd like of what we're proposing for each fund.
I guess my question is I did read the material that was originally given to us online.
Yeah.
And went through all of that.
Priority numbers,
And then,
yeah.
and then this late material was provided. What are the glaring changes between what we read originally in the document and then we have the old one, and then now we have the new
The
one? What are-
majority of the changes are just readjustment in some of the numbers because we've received some hard costs where some of the numbers were estimates. So that's primarily, and then there were a couple items that just weren't highlighted in green that should have been highlighted. So let me provide you with a list
Thank
in
you.
each category of what we have highlighted and are identified in each funding source as a priority from the staff's perspective. And then if you have questions on those projects, we can answer those, or if you think, you know what, I think that one's okay, we have another priority that we want to suggest. So let's start with the minor stuff, because that's easy, the stuff that's under $5,000. So we have as the top 8 priorities, and it's based on what we received last year. If that was how much we got this year, probably the only first 5 would get funded, but we're always going to ask, and we're always going to try.
Never hurts to ask.
Yep. So our capital improvements, so the minor requests are safety repairs to backstops, power tool replacement and hand tool replacement for park maintenance, iPads for the park rangers and our range coordinator out at the rifle and pistol range, adding some additional road base for the cemetery and continuing to do infrastructure improvements out at Lone Mountain Cemetery. A TV and a mount for the Bonanza Room, which is at the community center. It would match these televisions, so they could be a backup if these were to ever go down. So it would be the same system. Fuji Park, providing material bins. We store a lot of soil and rock and other materials, and it's to provide storage bins out there so we don't contaminate the others. And then community center, 3 of their drinking fountains, replacing with hydration stations in this building. So those were the minor requests within capital improvement. Is there questions on those, or what any of those projects would entail?
Do we see replacing every time a drinking fountain is going out, moving them into the hydration station so that, right, which means you can put a bottle and
Yes,
fill it.
that's
I
what
just
we're
wanna
trying
make
to
sure.
do. Yeah, so a hydration station is like with the bottle filler.
Right. Okay. No, I like that.
That's the goal. Most people are bringing water bottles with them, and they can't. With a standard drinking fountain, it's difficult to fill it all the way up. So any questions on those minor requests?
I had a general question, and that is, the cemetery, is that an enterprise account still, or has that been?
It is. It's an enterprise fund.
At what line do we, where is that line drawn as far as coming from the general fund and the enterprise fund? How does that? Just a brief
Sure.
explanation.
So this is the first year we've been in the black for the cemetery in forever. But it's still not fully self-sustaining. Dave's park maintenance budget is still purchasing materials and purchasing small equipment. So we've had to request from the capital improvement fund, from the general fund, to do some of those improvements as we needed to move forward. So last year, you'll see on our approved list, the Board of Supervisors authorized some general fund money to help do some improvements, road base being one of them, some fencing, some other repairs out at the cemetery. For that, yeah. We cannot spend quality of life funding at the cemetery. That's not an eligible location.
So could you just tell me what the minor CPA priority number 2 is? I can't find it on this.
It's the power tool replacement. Dave, do you want to talk about what that is?
Sorry, for the record, it's Dave Navarro, Park Operations Superintendent. So if you go to the very back, and I want to say it's the last, it's the headline's going to say Parks Equipment Fleet, and it's going to say rolling like stock, and it's 5-year like CIP. And so if you start with that page, you're going to go back 1, 2, you're going to go back like 3 pages. And what we did, and yeah, this is the first year. Fake numbers, I know. I just realized that. If you go to that page, then that's when you'll see the like number 2 item there, like for the power tools. It's not necessarily hand tools, but any power tools, which would be like the weed eaters, walk behind edgers, walk behind mowers, those types of, like blowers, stuff like that, trimmers, yeah. Welcome. Yes, everything that's highlighted in that category. Yeah.
Thanks, Madam Chair. You alluded to the guidance provided by the commission for prioritization. Could you just briefly speak to how these priorities, were they just based on the guidance that you already had, and how were these items prioritized, I guess is what I'm after.
Thank you. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. So a lot of this was sort of how this discussion has gone the last couple years, and I've taken all those comments that you and the board has provided to heart. We have a lot of staff meetings, and we talk about where the equipment is and looking at the inventory and the struggles of park maintenance or aquatics or wherever we're at. And as a group, we all decide what these priorities are as a staff and as a team. So we try to spread the wealth as much as possible, but we recognize the pool got a lot of love and the theater got a lot of love recently, and our park maintenance equipment and their support for their effort is really in desperate need. So as a staff and as a team, we felt that these were the priorities.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you're comfortable, let's move on to capital improvement major requests. So that's anything over $5,000. And that would be from the general fund that we're going to request. So things that are not eligible for quality of life funding, probably not eligible for residential construction tax or some other funding sources as well. So our number one request was Lone Mountain Cemetery irrigation upgrade. We're calling it Phase 3, so we already had money approved in last year's budget. We hired a consultant, Wood Rogers, and we had unanticipated pretty significant electrical needs for that project. So it's asking for another $50,000 to make sure we have adequate funds to make that project happen. Number 2 is a Kubota mower for the cemetery. It's only dedicated to the cemetery, and it's we have staff here. Nick Wentworth is here also, so if there's questions on the cemetery, he can answer those questions. But
And would that be one of those great big mowers?
I don't know.
Actually, Madam Chair, that's a good question. Unfortunately, it's a specialized mower that fits right between the headstones and around the markers. We would like to, have like a big mower out there, but there's no way to have a piece of equipment like that. And if we start taking big equipment like that over top of the like markers, then we damage them, we sink them. So this mower is like designed to go between all of those.
I would have thought you needed a special mower at the cemetery. Thank you for the explanation. I appreciate that.
Then number 3 is playground rehabilitation improvements, $75,000. For the past few years, we've tried to get $300,000 annually to reinvest in our playgrounds throughout the city. We're doing a really good job keeping up on that, putting new rubberized surfacing, making safety repairs, and doing audits on all of our playground equipment. We're kind of to the point where we're getting really caught up. This would just be for safety repairs. It wouldn't be rehabilitating an entire playground. We're going to be hopefully bringing on a new person to fill the senior park planner position. Vern Cron retired. We've reimagined that position just a tiny little bit, and it's now going to be a park project manager. One of the goals of that position is they would become a certified playground safety inspector within a year. And we're going to get audits on all of our playgrounds and look as a city, where do we have playgrounds? We want to make sure we have them on the east and the west and sort of geographically placed, but they're very costly. There's a lot of liability with playgrounds, so we want to try to reduce our playground inventory a little bit if we can. So that's why we're taking a little step back this year to just make sure we have a pot of money for safety repairs if we need it for some of the older playgrounds that are 20 plus years. Then we have the 5,900 Toro mower. Dave can tell you about what that is. I'm not sure. That's one of our larger mowers.
Yeah, that mower there, that is one that we use on the majority of our large turf-like areas. We did ask for one, not this past year, but the year prior to that, to replace 2 aging ones that we had. One was 1984 and the other one was 1986. And so what we did is we replaced one. We took the pressure off of the other one and used the first one for spare parts, and now we're at the point where we can no longer put Band-Aids on the one that we have, so that one needs replaced. And that one takes care of the large areas like Mills Park, this Fuji Park, some of the sports complexes, Roscold, and some of those bigger areas. And those types of mowers, and it's a 14-foot width mower, it mows those areas in a faster amount of time as opposed to using something like smaller. So it's more like efficient for our operations and the size of crew that we have. Sure, I guess Jen's gonna tag me in here. Okay, so that was number 4. Number 5 is let's see, security cameras, and that's 23,500. We have been encountering in all throughout our parks and open space. We've been getting a lot of vandalism, and we've been getting to it after the fact, and so we have been researching on ways that maybe we can, in some of those areas that are like commonly hit, to maybe like deter like the vandalism and the graffiti that we've been having. So with this camera system, what it does is it provides one camera where we can go up to it. We can transmit the information like Bluetooth, and then we can find out what has happened through like a time period. And then it also gives us an opportunity to move that like camera around to like a couple different like places as well. So we'll set up like 3 like stands. They give us 2 of the cameras are more like decoys. I guess I'd be careful saying that out loud in public, but they will have decoys. They will look just like the real thing. And then we will be able to rotate around to our spots that I get hit hard, like the MTP, like the cemetery, just to name like Mills Park. So just to name like a few areas that we can rotate that camera like around, so to help us hopefully like to cut down on the graffiti and the vandalism that's happening like within not only with the park systems, but also like in open spaces and on our trails as well. So
So the fact that these cameras are mobile and nobody will know where they are would also hopefully provide a deterrent, because you don't know if you're going to get caught or not.
yeah, these cameras aren't so much hidden. They are, but they do give out an audible warning, and they do give out kind of like a flash as well. And that audible warning could be whatever message we want to say. Like you were smile, you're on camera. We just took your picture and go from there. So they're pretty. We have looked into other security cameras that are more what they call like a trail cam, but those we have found in discussing with other like agency is sometimes those aren't as hidden, and people tend to walk away with those because you gotta put them down on a lower level. These cameras we can mount up high enough so somebody won't just go grab it and walk away with it. But so it's gonna be visible, and it's more of a deterrent. We're hoping, if anything, to deter them by having something like this in place that's going to give out like an audible like warning, and also like some flashes as well when they're taking their picture. So that's a good question though. Okay, number.
I just have a general question on that. So you're doing it in your mind to deter issues in that area. What makes you think, though, that the camera's just not going to be damaged? So have you checked with other locales? Because some things are coming to my mind from other lives of mine, but what makes you think you're going to be successful with the camera deployment? I mean, I just don't want to waste $23,000 is what I'm going to get to, because they're going to black it out. They're going to throw rocks at it. They're going to
Put a coat over it.
they're going to do a lot of things to it. So I just caution us that we check with other placements in parks or other things to see the success of it, because I think you're on the right track of a method that you want to do something to deter it. I just want to make sure it was great for a week and a half, and then anyway.
Heavy duty or what?
Well, yeah, I just bring that up.
Sure. Yeah, that's yes, our hope is to deter them, and our hope is that these cameras being out there that don't get vandalized, but how these cameras are like made, and I don't know the material, and I do have the information on what they look like. They're pretty robust, and they've got a pretty robust like case, and the glassing, it's not the right term, but the glass that's on it is pretty robust as well. These cameras are meant to be put in a spot that is up high and not necessarily where somebody can easily that get to them. So number one, I mean, so if they're gonna get vandalized, it's gonna be by either probably somebody throwing something at them, that's gotta be pretty accurate, and it's gotta be something that's gonna be pretty, coming at a high velocity, or they're gonna get shot at. You know, that's what they're, yeah. Yeah, but it's nothing that's gonna be easily accessible where someone's gonna be able to put something over it. So that's why we like these, because they're gonna be in a place up high. Yeah. But it's a good question.
It was more of a comment to go along with what Lori was saying. I believe Kenny and the sheriff's department have these. Do you know, have you talked to them about that?
Yeah, so I want to say it was a few years ago. I can't remember exactly when it was, but we did ask them to. We had a situation take place out at the CP Livermore Sports Complex, and we did ask them if we can put it on top of one of the light standards at BMX, and so
I'm
we
going to
did.
interrupt you. So they do have technology like this, and they do use it, and it's successful for them?
As far as I know,
Okay.
yes, they do have it, and like we did borrow it, like one time, something like I don't know if it's the exact same one, like model, but it's
Same technology,
very
same
similar.
idea?
Yeah.
And they liked it, and it worked well for them, and, okay, great.
Yep.
Do the decoy cameras also give a verbal warning?
That's a good question. I don't know that fact, if it does or not. So yeah, I mean, that's a good question though. I don't know that answer.
We're kind of getting in the weeds, but I was just curious. One more quick one. How much effort is it to move the camera?
Once the mounts are in place, it would just be a matter of us getting up there with the piece of equipment, so more like a bucket truck. And I think it's a real easy, like slide a pin out, take it off, and pop it over.
So would we move them randomly, or would we have a schedule? Because if we have a schedule, that seems to defeat the purpose of surprise.
For everyone who's listening, yes, we will have a schedule, but it'll be randomly. Yeah, but you won't know. Yeah, it'll be random. Yes. Okay, moving on. Item number 6 is the rifle range. There's a kiosk, and that is $35,000. So after doing some investigation and after getting some feedback like from the range, like task force, like committee, the discussion was how to collect like fees, because we're heading that way, that we will be charging like a fee, and during the discussions, they talked about having kind of like the Iron Ranger like kiosk, something that you would have like in a campground. You get an envelope, pay it, and put in this thing. Well, since that time, I've been looking at some more options, because once you start putting in an envelope and like cash, then we go into like our cash handling like policy. It's going to involve multiple people and us checking that every day. And nowadays there is an automated pay like stations that like the national parks are starting like to use, and some other local areas here also have this system where you can pay with the credit card on site. They also have the capability that if you have an annual like pass, you can issue them, cards, and they can take the card up to the machine and they can swipe it on there. Then it opens up like an arm and everything. And then in addition to that, it also comes with programming as well, that you can also do stuff online, and then you can run multiple reports on like a daily use, like weekly, hourly, to see, what type of like revenue and what type of what's the word I'm looking for, like attendance that you're getting on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And that way it takes kind of that out of our hands, where we have to then have a couple dedicated like staff to try to go into like the kiosk, pull all the envelopes out, having to count that money, make a deposit, just multiple steps that it eliminates. And so we're still, we're in the early stages, but we have talked to like a couple companies, and we're going to do some site visits here to see how they actually work. But if that's what that request is going to be for, is for an automated like pay station there at the rifle and pistol range.
Did I understand you right, that you said it also could be then an online? So I could go to whatever rifle range, Carson, cc.rifle range, and I could select an annual pass purchase for that then? You're saying that this comes with software that accommodates an online version?
Yes, that's what it looks like right now. There's still some more questions that I have on it to see if it can be integrated to what we're using right now, like like ActiveNet or like the finance. I don't know how that integration works yet, but yes, it does have feature, like not only can you pay there, but you can pay online. I just don't know how the two merge yet, and that's what I'm.
Because what I'm interested in, if looking at that price, as to how long to recover for $35,000. Whether or not it can also then be adapted for people to use their debit or credit cards and utilize it online for any of our passes, for the MAC, for the swimming pool. I mean, if it can be adapted for an online, then they would just select, I'm assuming, well, either a radial button or a little drop down that I want to buy a family pass, or I want to buy, because it kind of dovetails into the next item, but I'd like a little research on that. Can we make it more robust instead of just spending $35,000 for one item for the rifle range, when I don't know that we're going to even collect
It could be multifunctional.
that amount of dollars?
Yeah, no, that's when I started looking at these. There is a multiple different types of kiosks. They use them in like your subways and your
Right.
and those types of areas. So I think that once we have a single product, there's multiple products that you can add onto it, and that it doesn't have to be the same one every time. In addition, what we can also do, and what we've talked about, and what we've been working on at the cemetery is to clean up like the database there, and to provide an automated kiosk system there. And this could be something that could be integrated as well. So not something that you have to pay, but something you can go and look something. I think it has a lot of versatility, but I know where we're at the rifle range, and that's why we just had a single item now like for that. But I definitely do believe that it's something that it could grow into multiple things, and also be used in multiple areas.
Well, I'm just indicating I'll need a little more information for the cost-benefit analysis of that item, but I certainly see what you're after. And then the other question, because like you said, an arm would raise. So it's just like you go get your car wash at a surf place or whatever, and you have a little card and you flash it by the little thing, and the arm lifts and off you go. And that's it. You load your card with how much money on it. So I'm assuming that's kind of what you're talking about. Do we have the appropriate electricity and stuff without having to be able to accommodate this type of a kiosk there? I don't think we have a lot of electricity there.
So see,
Or solar.
like two good questions. So it does have a solar option where you can run say the kiosk on a solar option. If you add in an arm activation gate, you do have to have AC light power. Now, to add on to that, out there at the range, we did have utilities marked for the range project, and I was out there on Monday to see those marks. And there is red marks going through there that are like real close to the shooting bay. So it's something I'm going to investigate a little bit more. But I think by those red marks out there is an indication, like to me, that there is like power, like available out there at the range. So
In the right location that you'd put the kiosk, because the objective is they have to pay first.
yeah,
They don't
yeah.
They don't pay when the ranger's coming by and saying, let me see, never mind. Checking the cars and everybody runs and pays.
They leave.
Yeah.
You don't get out.
There you go. Okay.
Commissioner Meyer?
So I'm confused. Is this like parking? Like some places have a parking kiosk where you go over, you put your credit card in, you tell them you're in stall number 3 and it gives you a ticket and you put it on your dashboard? Or is this when you're coming into the range where the first thing you're going to see is this kiosk and you're going to pay at that kiosk and the arm is going to come up and let you in? Or are you saying that there are options for both?
So there are options, like for both, with this system where like you can go and you can put in your license plate number and make a payment right there, and that's how we can track everything. Or you can put in like parking spot number, and yes, and there is an option where you could pay there and it activates the arm and then we'll let you in like to the range like as well.
So the cost at $35,000, which option is that?
So that cost in there is for it's one self-automated like kiosk that will operate the arm once like payment has been made.
But not the arm.
Pardon me?
This is just the kiosk, not the arm mechanism.
This includes the arm mechanism.
This includes the arm?
Yes. Yeah, I guess if you want to,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Does
Yeah,
this also
yeah.
include the cost of providing, running electricity to the kiosk, or would that be an extra add-on?
So the amount that you have there is kind of like what is like an estimate with the add-on of like power. Don't know what that is yet. Like the cost for like the kiosk and the arm is about 20, if I remember correctly, 25,000 for the like the Cadillac, and to put in like a new like power service, we're estimating right now to be a roughly like 10,000. So we haven't got like a total cost for that. Like, yeah. Those are good questions. Yeah, no, that's good. That's kind of like something that we have just like discovered like recently and been trying to do as much homework and as much as we can, because we know this has the capability, like Supervisor Bagwell said, like to grow and to use at other places as well.
When Lori was talking about the passes and so forth and integrating that with ActiveNet, the experience I have with ActiveNet, you can do that now. I mean, you can get online and you can buy a swim card on ActiveNet and purchase that, correct? And what you're looking at is possibly integrating ActiveNet and the capabilities that I just described with this machine. Or are you talking about the machine coming into ActiveNet?
Yeah,
Thank
the
you,
first one.
thank you.
Yeah,
Okay,
because
so using ActiveNet to drive that machine in a certain way of buying those passes online and so forth. So instead of having using their software, we're actually going on to ActiveNet and I'm buying a range pass for a year that I could use at this kiosk.
Well, yes, but what this kiosk do, it has kind of like a barcode scanner. So when you do get your like
like a
pass, it
swimming
does have
pass.
it
Got
on
it.
there.
All right.
I think it does have the option, either flash it or if you need to pay with a credit card out there,
Got it.
you can do, so you can do like either or, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Barcode, just double check.
Yeah, no.
That it's not a proprietary software of their own that makes you have their encoded barcode, is what we're getting at, so that if they bought it,
Okay, yeah.
like you said, it
I'll have
has
to
a little
double-
paper receipt, you're saying from ActiveNet? Do we have a lot of people that currently go online and purchase passes?
Yeah,
I can
Like,
say,
darn, don't ask that, okay?
I can say from my experience, there are people that that they're very busy and they swim early in the morning and they know that they have a punch card and they know when it's coming up and they get online and put more punches on their punch card. Some people are disciplined like that. Most people are not.
So it might be another quiet secret in town. I don't know that most people realize.
Maybe we need to share that.
Well, I'm just saying, and put up bigger signs and do stuff that allow people to recognize you could load your card up or whatever, because the fewer interactions with staff, like you said, and they're just scanning a card somewhere and in there they go. That's just again, more efficient and effective, but
Yeah,
I don't know that
before
everyone
we get
realizes.
too much farther, like I said, it's something that, we have been, actively and aggressively looking into. And I don't know the total integration yet, but what we have seen so far in the information that we've been getting back, it's looking like real promising, so I hate to say yes, we're gonna be able to do that, but I think that there is a way that we can. I just not quite there yet, so. Okay, moving on. So number 7, we're still on the CIP major request here. Number 7 is an ABI infield, groomer. This is a specialty type equipment that is used to maintain all of our athletic fields, softball fields and baseball fields, like the skinned areas. In addition to that, what we have found out with this piece of equipment that we can add on certain attachments, and we can use it in some of our turf maintenance as well. We can get an air fire attachment. We have a laser level that we can add to it as well. They can also help with leveling out trails. And so this has become a very universal piece of equipment for us. We purchased our first one, 2 seasons ago, and it is being used a lot and year-round. And so we do have a need for another one. And so that's on here at number 7, and that's $21,000. dollars, 21,000. Sorry. So and then number 8 is pathway repairs, and that's for $50,000. And that, when we say pathway repairs, we're talking about for our multi-use path, our trails, our multi-use trails from single track all the way up to the I want to say double wide, but they're not. Greg Berggren has a specific term. Yeah, paved in concrete pathway. So that's what that is for. And then the last one we have on there is the Pony Express Air Park asphalt and drainage improvement, and that is $33,500, and that is to make some improvements out there. We have been looking at the area. We have some drainage issues, and we also have some issues with the deteriorating asphalt runway there. So that's what that request is for.
I was glad to see that one on there. I remember we had the public meeting and there was a lot of interested people about that. Did we ever touch base with the V&T to see if they'd be willing to share in the expenses, since it seems like their construction created part of the problem?
Go ahead. You got it.
Well, we did have the city engineer go out and look at it and then sort of make that connection through the city engineer. So I think they had a conversation, but I don't think there's going to be a shared cost, unfortunately. Yeah, we did, in our write-up for finance, though, we did put, because they had committed that they could try to commit $5,000 toward the project. So we put that into our effort, our write-up for finance, that the Pony Express, the Model Air folks would contribute $5,000 toward the effort.
Oh, the Model Air, not
No, not the V&T.
That was going to be my question, because I remember that they said that they would do fundraisers and so forth to get out there and help with it. And then they also said that the most important part of that was the fact that drainage needed to be fixed before they built a nice runway that would only suffer again because of the drainage issue. So
and be
did the city engineer feel that the drainage issue could be addressed for this amount of money?
Yes, we met with the engineers out there on site, and from where the issues, the concerns that were coming from, like the VNT, that we felt with this estimate here would include like some dirt work that would take place prior to the drainage reaching like the runway, so almost like a diversion by creating like a swale, like a drainage swale to take the runoff away from there.
And that's all included in this 35, excuse me.
That-
33,500.
Yes, that's correct.
So that would be drainage repairs and resurfacing the current. runway.
So that would be for drainage repairs and for crack, like sealing throughout the entire asphalt, so not.
Crack
Not,
sealing.
not a complete repair and replace.
All right, and I would just suggest those guys are pretty passionate, as much as you do with them, get them involved, because I went out there after that meeting and drove by. I had business at the dump, so, but at the same time, I went out there and that place looks really sharp. They take pride in that place, so.
Do we have any formal mechanism for contacting the RC Club and letting them know status of this type of thing?
We do. We keep in regular contact with them. Yeah. And then, once the board approves the budget, however that shakes out, we can definitely not let them know where we're at in the budget process.
And I don't know if it's the time or whatever, but because they're willing to pay into that and so forth, I'd like to see that moved up.
Moved up.
I mean, they're the ones, they came here and they really asked last year, and they're really passionate about that. And they had several people here. And I think if they knew that this was going on tonight, I think that they would be here at the same, voicing the same thing. So with their buy-in and their passion at the last meeting, I like to see it moved up. Thank you.
Question, if we move it up and we let the Board of Supervisors know that the RC Club is willing to contribute to the cost, would that be beneficial towards their case, or?
Yeah, we've included that in the write-up that would go to the board. They've indicated that they could contribute up to $5,000 toward the project. So right now, we have it as number 9 in major CIP. Do you have a recommendation as where you would like that to fall, if you want to move that up?
This is a harder question.
The pressure's on. You have to pick between your kids.
Well, ultimately, the automated kiosk for the rifle and pistol range, well, we don't know a lot about that. And so,
Would you like to swap those?
I guess I'd leave it up to staff, but no, I don't have a recommendation specifically where it should be.
Okay.
But I feel that from.
Can you just run through the priority numbers again, 1, 2?
So 1 was
That might work.
Lone Mountain Cemetery irrigation, the one that's continuation of previous year's funding. 2 was cemetery mower. 3 was playground rehabilitation improvements, so safety improvements. 4 was the large mower. 5, security cameras. 6, rifle range kiosk. 7, the infield groomer. 8, pathway repairs, so pavement and concrete repairs of trails. And then 9 was the Pony Express Air Park.
So think about, I consider this one even a safety of they can't fly their planes. I mean,
Well.
right? They were saying that the wheels even,
Right, and somebody might trip over the cracks, maybe.
so if I'm running down that list of items, because it surprised me that I saw that the playground piece, you were moving only to 75,000 instead of 300,000, because you're saying you're caught up.
So we have a couple projects in progress and just
Right.
timing-wise, it works best
I'm
for
not
us.
so sure we shouldn't move this to, especially because we have a small match, but we still do have some match that's coming in on this one with 5,000 coming from that club. And I think when you have public buy-in that helps you actually repair something, that should help move that project. When you can have a team that can come and sign an obligation or something with us. So playgrounds was what number? 4?
Playgrounds was number 3.
3? I think you just, and then push everything else down and put this
So
up
move
in
the air
there.
park up to number 3.
And then push everything else down.
easy to do because it's
Right. Right. So you just make it number 3 and push the rest down, because I just think
So
we
you want
should.
that ahead of playgrounds and right behind the cemetery irrigation
Yeah, I think we
and
need to do
mower.
the cemetery stuff as an
That's-
imperative.
Right? Their concurrence on
else?
that?
I thank you for helping me sort that out, but I.
No,
I'm-
it's really
I'm-
hard, and we've
Yeah,
had so many
but
staff meetings.
I do
it's
agree
difficult.
with Supervisor Bagwell in that seeing those people buy into this stuff is great. And I think the more that people see that happening and see
And they
people
can
see,
come with,
people seeing traction, that more people are going to come with those kinds of solutions rather than problems. So, thank you.
So if everyone's comfortable, can we move on to quality of life? And I think I'm just going to talk about the first priorities that are likely to get funded.
Yeah.
You have the whole list, but I know we have a lot to talk about, and I want to be respectful of your time. So this is quality of life capital. It's very specific on locations and types of projects we can fund with this. So number 1 would be continuing our irrigation and rainmaster upgrades. Our irrigation systems are really outdated, and
Right.
we're trying to keep up with current systems, and Dave can give you a whole like lesson on our irrigation problems, but they're pretty significant. Last year, the board did authorize $250,000. This is continuing, so it's throughout our whole park system. Number 2 is aquatic heating and plumbing upgrades. We were authorized for money last year's budget for that, and we went out to bid, and the cost, just with prevailing wage being lowered, our costs had gone up. So it was over what we estimated, so we're asking for an additional $50,000 to make sure we can get that work done. Then number 3 is repaving the MAC parking lot, which is behind the MAC. We put grindings down as a temporary measure. Obviously, the lines, you can't see them anymore. It's becoming messy. We don't have organized parking. We have, so many times where we're really impacting the neighborhood, and we need to maximize as much parking as we have possible. There's still $100,000 left from the original construction of the MAC facility. So the true cost for that is $315,000, but we're saying $215,000 would come from quality of life capital. Sure.
Does that design include, or has it gone to design as far as getting that number?
No.
Okay, because I know that there's a,
It's on the senior center project, was similar in size and scope. And
okay.
so
So I
facilities
know
gave
that
us
there's,
that quote.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I know that there was an issue with the kids from the Boys and Girls Club making it over to the field if there was something going on in that parking lot. So my suggestion to work with the Boys and Girls Club
Sure.
to make sure that they have a safe path between their clubhouse and the field in the back southwest corner.
Okay.
I know that was kind of value engineered out when we originally did that project over there. And I know that bringing it back, Katie and the board over there would appreciate knowing about it so they
That
could design.
pedestrian connectivity,
Yeah,
sure, a safe-
exactly. That's
safe path.
important for them.
So when I first started, that was actually slated for landscaping, and we recognized right after we opened that landscaping would have looked really pretty, but we really needed parking more than anything. So we actually got an exception with a special use permit to put grindings down. It didn't meet code until we could get enough funding to be able to do that. So we're really trying to meet that promise.
And if
but
we get
help
that money
maximize
and
it.
that brings it above it, I really think you should throw it back on them. I mean, I know that they have fundraising and grant opportunities that could help those kids get safely to that field that would be part of that. So just not to overlook that when it gets there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that suggestion. And then number 4 is a maintenance shop at Mills Park. So the existing footprint where we store equipment outside, we get a lot of vandalism, we get equipment stolen. There's a lot of things we can't put there because we don't have an enclosure. So that would be to enclose that space. If you ask the maintenance staff, that'd probably be their number 1 request right now. And then just number 5 is to plaster the therapy pool. So those are sort of the top 5 out of that fund that would likely be funded based on the amount of funding available. We have a much longer list, and obviously we have to put that in place. So if certain projects fall through, we have a backup, or if some projects actually come under budget, then we have something in the queue ready to go. But those are the priorities for the quality of life capital funds. Any questions on those, or do you think they're not?
And Jen, and it may or may not fall within this. Under the Mills Park Aquatic Facility, what is a Cajun system and why are we removing it?
Do you want to talk about that?
Cogen.
All right, I'll try to explain this as Mike's taught me, but basically I know, Kurt probably knows more than I do, but basically it was a system, it's a large engine that they put in, it sounds like what, 20?
Diesel engine?
Yeah, diesel engine that they put in like 20 years ago, that they thought was gonna create some cost savings for the aquatic facility,
For heating.
for heating.
So, you want me to
Be my guest.
Kurt Meyer, retired city employee. So yeah, several years ago, 20 years ago or so, the price of electricity went up. And of course, Hess Microgen came to the city and offered us a cogen system over there that would generate electricity, put it back into the grid. We could use the heat off the exhaust of that motor and cooling that motor to put into our heat loop, to heat the swimming pools and the showers. It was all a win-win. And when it got there, the price of gas came up. And so it equalized, and then the maintenance agreement kept ratcheting itself up throughout the years, throughout the months. So it was got to the point where it was more beneficial for us to shut it off than it was for us to keep it running. So it was kind of a kerfuffle, and it wasn't really any money out of our pocket because they were the ones guaranteeing those savings. Those savings didn't come, and it's sitting there now empty, and that's to remove it, is my understanding. How'd I do?
Thank you. So basically, the request is because it's no longer functional, it's not a small little generator, I mean, it's a big motor, so it takes up a lot of space. Storage is always an issue at the aquatic facility and at any of our facilities, so the request there is to be able to remove that so that eventually we can use that space for storing other more necessary items instead of just having it sitting there wasting away and not being used.
We're no longer on the hook for a monthly maintenance agreement or anything, so
There might be an ability to have that salvaged, I don't know. You know, I know we talked about that when it first went off, is if we could get any money back for salvage. I don't know if there's a market for that now. There was at the time, and we decided not to go that way, so.
Yeah, we've had facilities look at that and, a couple different options, and it's actually to get it out of there is going to be a challenge.
I'm guessing it's the equivalent of a tube TV set.
Maybe worse, yes. Yeah. We recognize that's not an immediate need. It's something we want to have, but it's lower on the list and frankly likely to not get funded. So that was our number 12. So really realistically with the amount of funds, only probably 4 or 5 projects will get funded for quality of life capital because there's only around 600,000-ish available. So we do have a really long list, but yeah. So any questions on those priorities or concerns? Okay. So if you want, in the spirit of time, we have our fleet inventory here and our needs, and then we also have the rolling stock equipment inventory. If you want to just ask any questions that you might have or share those priorities. Last year, we received $448,000 for fleet, which was so generous. We have the oldest fleet in the entire city, so we're really, really happy to get that. You don't typically get anything for 12 to 18 months after it's funded, so we'll start to see soon some of the benefits of that investment. So we're, requesting for this fiscal year from general fund CIP that our whole fleet list for FY21 would be funded is our request. We'll see where that goes, but we can always ask. It is less than what we got last year, so I'll just point that out.
Well, I'm really hopeful, though, that we can get the rolling stock and the fleet on so many vehicles per year. That's what we did as a board for the sheriff's office. We're working in the fire department to do, that you're going to get so much per year because we didn't want the fire department or even the sheriff's office saying, Lori, I need 95 vehicles. Well, then you're gonna need 95 vehicles in 8 years from now too.
Right.
Instead, it's better to say you're gonna get 10 per year.
Sure.
And then we can afford it in the budget. So I hope we can really sit down and think of a plan here too, to say something realistic that then you can look forward to saying, I'm getting 5 each year or 6, you know.
And that's
what I
kind of
really
what
hope for.
happens at that CIP workshop that we talked about. The majority of time, we talk about fleet, to be honest, and what the greatest needs are, and we all come to the table with our top priorities within that budget year.
So that's what I hope we can accommodate in the park system too, is to get it to a percentage or something. I just had a general question. I'm looking at the Pete Livermore Sports Complex. And so right now, we're working on the parking lot, right?
It's in design.
But my question really becomes on the other item here where it says secondary access and improvement. So we really have $39,000 that's sitting in a one of those accounts that a foundation will help with. I don't see this programmed anywhere. I don't see it anywhere in your chart. Are you saying that you guys don't see that project happening for at least 5 years? I mean, or more than 5 years?
We do, we just don't really have a cost estimate. I'm actually hoping that after we get the bids on this parking lot, we can get a better cost and nail that down. And then use that money toward design and then be able to have a construction cost that we can program in here.
Because the
I realize it's not
39,000
there.
could go to design. I'm letting
Of
you know that
course,
money can
yes.
go to design.
Yep,
So we're not
I don't
sitting
know
on
if-
that money for 5 years.
right.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, we can add that in there just so we make sure that we have that obviously as a line item, but we don't really have a realistic cost. So we were sort of hoping we get better costs with the parking lot and then we might have more information that we can program in here.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? You're not required to make a motion for the board. You're welcome to just direct staff based on the comments that you've made, if that's the board's pleasure.
Commissions or, any thoughts or suggestions on that? Are we comfortable with the direction the discussion took?
So I just want to recap, the only change that you had was moving the Pony Express Air Park from number 9 in major CIP to number 3.
Correct.
And then moving the entire list down.
And then letting the
And the-
RC folks know so that they can,
We will, and then I took notes about the rifle range kiosk and the other questions that you guys had, and
And then moving
we'll
the
follow
park,
up on that as well.
the sports courts into the right parks.
Yes, yes, we'll make that change.
Yeah, tennis courts here, whatever.
basketball court, whatever.
Right.
We will, yep.
Right.
We'll make that adjustment on the 5-year plan.
24 pickleball. I knew he was gonna have to make a comment. There you go, okay.
So Jennifer, do you need any
Public
further
comment.
direction from us?
I
or you
think,
good?
I think we're good, thank you.
Okay. Any public comment on this item? All right. Let's move on to our next agenda item then. And thank you guys for all the hard work that went into this. Realize it wasn't probably done in a day.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Dave and the maintenance staff really did the yeoman's share of all this. It really is a lot of work and hours and trying to, as a team, work together to make sure we're all getting the needs done.
Well, this is an impressive document, so thank you very much
And I
for all the time
apologize
and
for
effort.
killing so many trees, but we wanted to make sure you had the most accurate information.
That's it, Jen.
Well, it should set you up, though, for the future years. So my hope is that next year, when we're here, we really should see the unfunded items. So if something was number 5 was the cutoff, pretend, that should like move up to number 1, and unless some emergent idea comes, we should start to see
things
patterns and, you know, we'll get a familiarity with what's going on. And
That's my hope as well. The only unknown will be that, facility assessment that we get. So if there's some big surprises in there or, it might throw things off, but that'll be really helpful information.
All right, let's move on to agenda item 3H, discussion and possible action regarding a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors on the draft fees and charges policies and draft policy fee schedule. And it looks like Jennifer and Dan are going to do that.
I need to make a disclosure.
All right.
first. Thank you. NRS 281A 420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. In my private commitment, I serve as the treasurer of the Foundation for the Carson City Parks and Recreation Board, a private nonprofit organization that provides support to the Parks and Recreation Department. The foundation is mentioned in the policy as an example of an organization that could possibly receive a fee waiver. However, any benefits that the foundation might receive are not greater or lesser than any other similarly situated organization. I make this disclosure in the interest of full transparency, but because my independence of judgment on this matter is not materially affected by my commitment to the foundation, and also because Nevada ethics provisions only require abstention in clear cases, I will be voting on this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. Before I get started, I just want to point out the other two pieces of late material that you have. You'll have a cost recovery, a new attachment D. It's adding another column on there for you to give you some information. These late material items were based on some feedback that I received from board members with questions about the fees and the policy, and just to try to help you wrap your head around this. This is a really big item and a huge undertaking, so I realize we might not be done tonight, and we might need to come back in April and kind of massage this and kind of work forward. And then you have another piece of late material about the cemetery. So it has some more information about the scope of work and the tasks that are provided at the cemetery and what those actually entail. It also has some hours available, and then it has, if someone comes in and they need services, what's included in like a package, what line items constitute for a burial. And then Nick Wentworth is here too, so when we get into the cemetery, if you have some specific questions on that, he's really great and can answer those questions for you. So I just wanted to point out that late material before we go. So to move on, I want you to know this is just a draft. This is just an initial draft policy, initial draft fee schedule. We fully recognize that it probably needs a little bit work, and there's been a lot of questions. We recognize that. We're more than happy to bring this back and make those changes, but I just really wanted to have this initial discussion with you so we could try to move forward. In your packet, you have a copy of the 2009 resolution. That's the last time the fees have been addressed. For the cemetery fees, they have not been addressed since 1989. So it's a long time. There was an effort, and I talk about it in your staff report, to try to update the resolution. In 2010, it was the recession, it was bad timing, and the Board of Supervisors decided to table any updates to the resolution at that time for the fee schedule. So it's been a long time since the fees have really had a hard look. Our operation has changed, since 2009. We have different staffing levels, different levels of service. We're growing, we're doing really well. We're trying to be, think like I told Supervisor Bagwell today, I want us to be in between a business and a nonprofit. We want to keep the lights on and pay for the things that we need to, but we also want to make sure that we have affordable services for the public to use and enjoy as well. So it's kind of a delicate balance. The audit committee was really supportive, and they authorized our internal auditor, Ide Bailey, to assist us in this process. So they've looked at this policy and they've looked at our fee schedule, and all of their comments are already incorporated into what you see before you today. I've also had the finance department look at it, our city manager and deputy city manager take a look at it, and Mihaela looked at it as well. And so those changes are incorporated. As far as ease of discussion today, if it's okay with you, I thought we could start with the policy and any feedback or questions and guidance you had on that, and then we could separately tackle the fee schedule if that works for everybody, just so we're not hopping back and forth. There's a couple questions in the fee policy. It talks about the need for flexibility. I want to just make sure it's clear, and I think we need to adjust some wording, and especially in section 2.2. the Board of Supervisors has the ultimate authority to approve fees. We wanted to have some opportunity for flexibility where the city manager can approve fee waivers, and there's some other sort of things contemplated in there, but ultimately the board has to approve that. So if something new comes up and we bring it to the Park Commission, the ultimate approval would have to go back to the Board of Supervisors. So Section 2.2, we think might need some wording changes to make sure that that's clear. Some people were confused on that section. But I just want to point that out, that they're the ultimate authority on the fee schedule and the fee policy. The intent for me, and I apologize for not including it in the staff report and creating the confusion, but my intent is that the fee policy would take place of the resolution. The resolution is great in some ways, but there's a lot of scenarios that we have to deal with on a daily basis that are just not addressed in that resolution. So it doesn't address everything. I tried to put everything possible that we deal with in the policy. I fully realize that it's a long document and it's kind of a lot to digest. So we might need ways to shorten it up and make it a little bit more clear, and I'm open to your suggestions in that manner. But as far as a procedural thing would go, let's say we have a final policy either today or in April or sometime in the future. The Board of Supervisors procedurally would hopefully repeal that resolution and then adopt the new policy and then the fee schedule with that. So just to kind of make sure that everybody's on the same page on how that might go before the Board of Supervisors. And then we talked about the late material. If you want to just, hopefully you've all read the policy, and then and staff would be happy to answer any questions about the policy, and we're welcome any suggestions you have or wording you want changed. I spoke to Supervisor Bagwell this morning. She had a lot of great suggestions. But any feedback on the policy would be welcome at this time.
Question. Jen, do you have a specific time frame in mind, or if we take this till April, would that be okay with you and your staff?
That would be fine with me. My plan is to, based on the feedback we received from you tonight, we would further refine that, and then we'll bring it to open space at the end of the month, so they have a chance to comment and review. If we need to bring it back here in April, that's no problem, and then we can bring it back to the board. I'd like to do it before the fiscal year because some of the fees, like the rifle and pistol range, I really think it would be important to have that perhaps, at the board's pleasure, but my recommendation would be to have those rifle and pistol fees in effect at the beginning of the fiscal year, which would be July 1. And then any other changes we could talk about. The policy talks about giving people notice in a couple months, so maybe in September for the other fees or something like that, as far as an implementation plan.
Thank you. Can you just give like a broad overview of some of the feedback you've already received so maybe we don't duplicate? Would that be okay?
Sure. Let me get my notes. It's been a lot. So some general comments is that it's too long. And I know, I completely agree. We created the policy based on other policies throughout the region. So we really were trying to capture best management practices from other agencies and recommendations from the National Recreation and Park Association into this policy. So that's the heart of what happened. Some of the basic comments were to have some sort of overarching statements and try to reduce some of the philosophy of it, the why. And I'm all about the why, I get that, and but maybe bringing that down a little bit. And then a comment that Supervisor Bagwell said was move the definitions up front. So that way you know exactly what you're talking about when you're reading the policy. So we can definitely rework that. There is some areas that I think we could do. Some cleanup in that way. For me, another comment was, so let's say the cemetery fees is having an opportunity, we provide an opportunity for people to have a payment plan if they need it, and putting some language in about a payment plan, the opportunity, and how that would work. And then if they can't afford some of our services. So, and probably it would be for specific things. Right now, we have a partnership with the Children's Cabinet. They provide scholarships for our before and after school program or summer, winter break winter or spring programs. So they provide that scholarship program. YSA helps us with youth sports, but there's some other areas that there isn't a scholarship program, and we might need a payment plan for. So I see the payment plan option being to fill the gaps where others aren't subsidizing or helping those that might have low income or special needs, or maybe veterans to pay for a burial. Well, veterans aren't charged, but that's a bad example, sorry. But for someone that maybe couldn't pay for their spouse to be buried and then maybe just needed some more time to be able to pay for that.
Just in general, looking at the policy, so one of the things that concerns me, or not concerns, that's not the right word. So when I look at a policy in the city, that is generally approved by the city manager, not the Board of Supervisors. And so on here, if your intention is to eliminate the resolution, and then we also don't have a code, what I'm looking at here is it's like, okay, I'm gonna take it for review by the Board of Supervisor looking on your header. So I'm uncomfortable with this procedure unless it also says department approval, city manager approval. It will need to have to add Board of Supervisors approval, because we have already delegated that the city manager has the authority over policies, and I'm not comfortable with this one being a city manager policy because it's so far reaching with all these fees. So if you want to keep it just in a policy and remove the resolution, I could only support that if this particular policy in its header indicates it's mandatory Board of Supervisor approval. If that makes sense, what I'm trying to say.
And that was actually my intent, and I put Board of Supervisors to be determined, but I didn't. It should have been in the approval column,
Right,
not
so
in
I'm
the
just
section.
saying, I'd like to see it, though, designated, just in case there's other footprints that some of the other ones, again, that we might want to look at to say, hey, maybe we don't want that in a code, but we want to just adopt it by policy, but I don't want to allow the city manager the broad stroke of, we passed it, and then she can change it the next day.
Yeah, and I spoke to the city manager about that. She's completely on board
Okay.
with that as well.
So then looking at it, when we go to 2.3, I think you mentioned you were already going to try to work on some of the fee establishment. And so I'm confused, and maybe it's just me reading it, on 2.3 usage, the last sentence. Fees will be charged by the city for the use of its facility when public resources are utilized by profit-motivated individuals. So you're just saying if it's a profit-centered answer, it always will have a fee?
Yes,
Is that a different way for
Well, I'm
different wording.
I guess I don't like the way it's worded.
Yeah, I
I'm just
agree.
telling you, I'm
Yeah.
like,
No, it's fine.
yeah. So
It won't
maybe,
hurt my feelings, but we
Okay.
want to make it right, so.
well, that's what I wrote.
And there's a weird space in there, so I think I had something in there and it just didn't make it. So we'll change that.
Okay. So even if what if a for-profit entity is actually giving all the proceeds to a nonprofit activity? Like, let's say, I don't care, they were gonna give all of the money to pickleball. I just thought I'm just saying that, again, I want to be careful.
That's
we-
wonderful in thought, but we get so many reservations from private groups and they say, oh, we think we're gonna give, and then maybe they don't actually do that. I mean, how are we gonna know? So.
Well, no, that's what I'm
Exactly.
looking for.
Yeah, so if a nonprofit reserves the facility, they'd be eligible for the nonprofit discounts and all those things that go with it. But if a private company ends up doing it, we need to separate that because there's not a check and balance with that. And I think that would be staff and time intensive.
So the one I want to talk about the most then within that environment, because I watch it, let me just say it this way. I don't think the general public, so your pavilions that are in Mills Park is a perfect example. to me, and people want to have their birthday parties and things like that. So you can reserve and pay a fee and get to use it. And that's the only way you're supposed to get to use it. But what happens is people go and look on the calendar or whatever and see that it's not reserved. So then they go and camp out there at, 6:30 in the morning to get their spot and bring all their stuff, and then they have their birthday party. So I want to be realistic in what we're doing, and then is the real comment is if you want it reserved and guaranteed, you pay for it.
Yep.
But you get to use it because we're not going to kick people out if they're using it. Is that correct?
Yeah, and so I think we can improve our signage to address that issue, to make sure that we're enforcing that. Because if you want to guarantee that it's clean and available, you should make a reservation. Otherwise, it's a first-come, first-served facility, and you run the risk of staff not knowing that there's a reservation, it might not be clean,
But they
and then it
can
creates
use
other
it
problems.
because I was at a park and listened to a discussion that occurred, and they were told they had to get out, and it wasn't reserved. I'm like, they don't have to get out. It's a park. Now, it's not going to get cleaned for you and all that other good stuff, but
So at a few
Right.
of our locations, it should be group use by reservation only, and Mills Park is a great example. If you have a group and you've reserved it, you should have that available. Our neighborhood parks are really those first come, first serve facilities where we provide that free opportunity. These are the larger pavilions, so they're made to house larger groups. So if there's a different policy that you want us to consider, we're happy to talk about it, but these are for the
well, I think this is
fee-based.
the time for us, I mean,
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about here. So I don't know how the rest feel, but I certainly don't. Again, if you want the reservation and the guaranteed use, you're paying for it.
Agreed.
I can't see, I just can't see going up to somebody and telling them, oh, you didn't pay me $100 or something to use this a portion of the park, and ergo, you need to leave. So I don't know how the rest of you feel. I mean, I think I'm looking for input on this idea.
I think that only if it's reserved should maybe a statement to that effect be made. If it's not reserved, first come, first serve.
That's what I'm saying. Should we do the same in Mills Park and that we do in the neighborhood parks, is what she's
Let me
saying.
ask Jen this real quick. Jen?
Yeah, I get what-
Mills Park, the pavilion, how often is it rented out, reserved, and the fees paid versus just, shall we say, casual use? Is that something you could
Well,
address?
I can tell you that in the summer, it's reserved constantly. It's nonstop, whether it's a special event or it's a birthday party, like Lori said, or any other example. It's a lot. So when you have that use in between, it's really hard on the maintenance staff to make sure it's clean, because if they might only have a certain window and then people are using the facility and then someone paid to rent it the next morning and then they couldn't get back to use it, then it's already dirty. So you're constantly chasing that clean facility.
And the way Supervisor Bagwell explained that is the way we do it now, correct? You can rent a facility, you rent it, they turn the power, some of them, they turn the power on, clean it.
Yep.
It's all set up for you. If there's a
Correct.
problem, the park ranger
Yep,
will
they're
let the people
available to
know
assist you.
that, no, Mrs. Jones did reserve this and Mrs. Smith has to leave.
Yep.
And it works that way
And they
now.
have paperwork to show that they have a permit for that time.
And there's no changing that. That's the way we want to proceed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Question is whether the first come use for the non-reserved time. What the park ranger told these people is they had to leave. They were not reserved because it's the group area, and they said, you have to, this is reservation only. Maybe that's a better way for me to say it. Do we want the pavilion spaces at Mills Park to be reservation only? Which means you have to pay.
So my input would be to leave it the way it is, in that if there is a reservation, those people have that priority and they trump everything. They don't have to camp out at 6 o'clock in the morning. But if somebody shows up, they'll have to be politely asked to leave. But if there is no reservation on that facility on that day and somebody does camp out at 6, they can have that.
Jen, is there a calendar that people can check to see whether or not the pavilion has been reserved, or is it just kind of a free-for-all?
Do you have that posted online? Do we have that posted online? No. We don't, but I think that's something that we want to do, and we're trying to work with ActiveNet. So part of this, there's other intended consequences with this policy, is to have what we call fast-track facility rentals, pavilions being one of them, where people can go online and just book the pavilion. Not have to call, not have to come in and make a payment. Like, right now, it's very labor-intensive. It's too hard to rent a pavilion. You have to have your insurance, you gotta have all this, blah, 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 blah. So the intent
Insurance
of
is
some of
what
this.
caused the problem.
It's some of the problem. It's a big problem. It is, yep. Yep. And we do have a lot of facilities other than Mills Park that are first come, first serve and free and available to the public. We just took one off commission, Ross Gold, because we had to tear one down, but our intent is to put one back. That one was one of the most popular.
Question? Is there currently a posting at the facility when it is reserved for for a day? Because like a campsite, I'm thinking, you know.
We'd probably have to something more permanent. We have a lot of activity at Mills Park, but I think posting the reservation schedule is a great idea. Mhm.
And just related to that, the posting of the schedule, you mentioned that part of the issue for staff is getting in to do that cleanup time. So if somebody, say, reserves it from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., what's the window of time before 3 p.m. that staff needs to be able to make sure it's clean? Like, should it then be reserved from 2 p.m. to 5:30, or, you know what I mean?
So, well, for the staff window, it just depends. We work around the reservation schedule. In the summer, the staff is off at 2:30, the maintenance staff, so it needs to be cleaned before then. So if they cleaned it, let's say at 2 o'clock, and then we had a reservation at 4, and people came in, it's difficult. So that's where we'd probably bring in our park rangers to kind of manage that whole situation. But as far as the cleanup, I mean, that's on us, in advance of the rental, but they have to put it back how they found it. Otherwise, they don't get their cleaning and security deposit back. So they need to clean it up, and they need to do it. And a lot of people just don't want to deal with it, and they take off, frankly, and they're like, well, it's worth, keep your $150 because I don't want to do it. And it happens more often than not.
Just on that, how many do you have that don't have reservations that have left a mess, that have to be cleaned up? Do we have any?
Countless.
Countless.
Every day. Every day. Either right before or after a rental, people are using it every day. So, and we have a lot of, we have a pretty large homeless population at Mills Park, a transient population that goes through there. They rely on those picnic pavilions quite a bit, so that's a lot of what we have to contend with at Mills.
Maybe you could have in your posting, if you did arrange a posting at the park, a built-in time frame where drop-in use, non-paid would not be allowed, so that the ranger could. Yeah, so if you had a reservation at 2 o'clock, then nobody's allowed to use it after
Certain
9
times,
or
so we can
10
make
or
sure it's
something like
clean.
that. Yeah.
In definitions, in light of what I said earlier, but because it's used throughout in places anyway, you should define what board means. So that should be an added.
It's at the beginning.
Definitions are going to move to the front, and then,
Oh, okay.
so board should be defined. I must have missed it. Where was it defined? It should be in definitions. Okay, moving on. Should say Board of Supervisors. That's the board you mean, right?
It's in 2.1, so Open Space Advisory Committee, the Parks and Recreation Commission, and the Board of Supervisors is defined there in that paragraph.
Would you like it moved higher in the document?
But I'll just add it to the
What I'm saying is you
definitions
move definitions to the front properly, and then you would define board, and then you could just use the word board. You could just use the word,
Yeah.
then you can use the word once instead of some places it's spelled out, some places it's initials. And again, they've done a great job on this.
No, I'm happy to make
It's
that
the
change.
small tweaks. On I guess I want to just talk all together as a group about fee waivers. And really looking overall at everything that we're doing, because one of the questions I had was, who is really renting our facilities? And the most important one to me, as an example, would just be the community center. And I know that and maybe we have competing interests throughout some of the other activities that I do on behalf of the board. So like redevelopment gives out money to these nonprofits that come to put on events, right? So through redevelopment, the Culture Commission's giving out $25,000 worth of dollars, and we're giving out 10 or 20,000 in redevelopment to come and turn around and rent the community center, and then we're over here discounting it and waiving it. And I guess I just look, again, as a policy, and I think I asked this morning, I don't want to misquote you, was it 75% or something you said, or all to?
I have some
Oh, you
good
have
hard
some-
numbers
okay.
for you if you want me to share.
Okay, because I was asking, well, how many people are renting and what are we doing here?
Yeah, I have that. So to just kind of walk you through an overview, of all the renters that we get, 10% are commercial. So this is looking at last year, so as an example. So we had 29 commercial renters, 29 separate reservations, 10%. Another 10% was from non-residents, which was 28 reservations. We had 87 from residents, which captures 30% of the total reservations. Fees that were discounted, so for example, 4-H, RSVP, other nonprofits that qualified 501c3 nonprofits were 7% of the use, so 22 reservations. That includes special events, just to capture that. Obviously, those are a lot more work. Then there were 128 reservations that had fees waived entirely. So that's 44% of our users. So if you want to know who those people are,
What was the basis for the fee waiver?
I'll tell you right now. So the fee waivers are primarily city departments, boards and commissions. They're all counting as a reservation.
Oh, okay.
So they're all city authorized uses. Also, Culture and Tourism Authority. I have a whole list of the.
So like using this room for
Exactly.
a meeting.
Yep. So that existing practice is what I
School
use
board.
for the basis of that, but it wasn't on a consistent basis. So that's the whole goal for that policy. So if you want to talk about the fee waivers, so 39% of those fee waivers, so 50 reservations, were city agencies, city departments. 30 reservations, or 23%, was from the school district joint use agreement. So the school district use is 23% of our reservations, so quite a bit. CTA endorsed events, so Culture and Tourism Authority, we have a separate agreement between the city and them. Those endorsed events, we don't charge the rental rate. That's 10% of our reservations. Then we had 27% of others, but they fit into those other areas, like a nonprofit, or there's a city agreement that dictates that they're not paying or something like that. So that's what comprises that 44%, which is the majority of our use.
All right,
Does that answer your question?
it helps.
Okay.
Well, again, I just think it's important that we know what we're waiving or what we're recommending. So I think functionally, if the school board's having a meeting, the park and rec board's having a meeting, that makes sense to me to be waived. I guess the one that's probably maybe, I don't know, the school does what? Do they do concerts
Yes.
in the theater?
Yes.
To me, so when I look at everything that we're trying to accomplish, the one rate area that I'm the most concerned about is the communities, the theater. We have a lot of expenses and a lot of things that we need to do in there, like the orchestra pit and things that we're trying to accomplish. We just did the chairs, the seats and stuff, but we have a big expense in there, and we're turning around and almost fee waiving it all. I guess do you know, and I'm sorry I didn't ask earlier, how much revenue we actually brought into the theater? By any chance? And it may be something, again, as we keep looking, I just want us as a group to really hone in on some of the things we're trying to accomplish and say the same thing when we go to set a fee or a rate. That might be one we say, unless you're a governmental entity, it's not getting waived. Because we're trying to recover the money to do the orchestra pit and the paint, I don't know.
If you look at the late material, we provided to the blue and purple chart that says attachment D, 5-year cost recovery. If you go down to the community center, and the first line item that says auditorium use fees, that's the theater. So that's how much we're bringing in for the theater. Then also you see that third item down, rec equipment rentals. Some of that is for the theater, so add-ons for things that they need for shows. Not all of it, but some of it is for the theater. So that's what we're bringing in. I mean, the majority user of the theater is the school district.
Oh.
Jen, just for clarity, the numbers you gave us on fees waived and so forth, those percentages, that's based on all facilities that charge fees? Is that correct?
Yes, so what you have in front of you are all the accounts where we bring in revenue. We have a lot of other accounts, but this is just a revenue summary, so the only places where money is coming in.
And the percentages you gave applied to everything, not just the theater. I was a little confused as to whether we were just
Oh, yes, so
talking
the
theater or everything.
reservation number, yeah, that's all of the reservations that we do throughout the entire park system.
Thank you.
So pavilions and buildings. Thank you. Excellent.
Just to follow through on that. And that's one of the things why we have these joint meetings between the school district and the board of supervisors. I think stuff like that is the stuff that we should discuss. Because you're right, we use it a lot. And I
Right.
think even the pool, we use a lot. And I mean, I'm on NIAA, and that's why I was late. I had an eligibility hearing in Reno for that. But there's not one time that we ever have an NIAA meet over there that anybody ever says a bad word. They always say we have the best facilities in the north, and that's why NIAA wants to come here. But those are things that we need to discuss, because if we are using it, and I mean, we all have budgets,
Yes.
but if we are one of the ones that are using it, then I think that's should come up for discussion. And I think that's one of those reasons why we have those joint boards meetings, is stuff to talk about that, and our SORs, and we haven't been using them. So I would really hope that that's one of the things that we have one in February. And I think
Yes.
we have enough time to
Put this
bring
on
that
the
up,
agenda.
especially with the budget coming up in May. So I think you should talk to your city manager. I'll talk to the superintendent. And I think that that's something that has to be done, and talk to the people that are going to use it. And then we also have that Snyder building that we're still looking at. That's going to have some theater things too. And so
Oh,
then
that'd be a relief.
right? So that would help in that situation too, and could be adjusted at that time if that's what we end up using it for.
Right.
But as a school district person, I have no problem with that, especially when you actually sit down and you look at the numbers. That's crazy.
And see what we're actually,
Right.
And the pool and the theater are two of our most costly facilities, and both take very specialized staff. So the staff typically cost more at those two facilities.
And I mean, when we look at the Parks and Recs with the youth sports programs, the schools get used a lot. But it's not to the point where we have to redo the floor every so many years or things like that. So I think when you're talking about fixtures and upgrades, I think that's definitely something that we should be going in, together with, because it benefits both of us. And it
Well,
shouldn't be just the city that has to fix it
no, and I
up when
really
we're the ones
appreciate it,
using
because what I'm concerned about is we're setting a rate and then it's not real because we always discount it or waive it. So, you look at someone, go, oh, yay, pretend, who cares? We charge $100 a day for the use of XYZ. Well, no, we don't. We're actually only capturing $44 for that. So I guess I'm always into transparency and that it's clear what everything is. And I'm not for charging government, because again, I'm not going to charge the park budget to have the park commission have a meeting. And maybe that's even part of our differences, meeting rooms versus the things that are highly intensive staff support. And like I said, we need, I can't remember But how much more do we need in the community center, the orchestra pit, was it $700,000 more dollars?
At
To
least.
even move on to the next set of projects. The aquatic center, I was thinking, oh my gosh, are we putting in $500,000 a year type stuff and catching up to be able to do that? So you either have to recover it off the paying customer, who then is subsidizing all the non-paying customers. And so I look to just be realistic. And I guess part of it is the nonprofits, and that's a question too. But you're saying we only had, that almost seems impossible to me. 22 reservations, but were those all for the theater use? See, we don't know, right?
Well, I have a
Because there was
list.
only 22, but I'm still betting they're all theater, right?
Hold on, I
That's-
can tell you. Hold on.
Oh, okay,
The swimming pool doesn't use a reservation system.
right, right, so I'm,
Seasonal.
Mhm.
Season is swim season, and they come in pool Monday through Friday, and it's on Saturday night.
and they don't pay anything for the use of the pool?
That's correct. Well,
But they're part of swim clubs? I guess that, again, the question is, are they paying like a fee to be a member to a swim team? And yet we don't get any money for recovery, like $5 a kid or something, I don't know. Just thought,
so when I was there, and you can help me with this, is that there's two different types of swim teams.
okay,
There's the swim team that we're talking about right now that Stacy's involved in, the school district. The school district season starts in February and it ends just about in May. And during that time, those kids come after school and they swim.
for
They have their
practice.
practice for a couple hours, they go home. We also have a club team over there, and that club team has a contract with Carson City, and that contract says you're gonna pay X amount of money per month to use the swimming pool. You're also gonna give us, an X amount of money every year for facility upgrades and things like that. And they have keys to the facility, and we have insurance from them and so forth, and they use that. And then there's also swim teams that might come from outlying areas that want to practice in the pool, and they're charged, when I was there, they were charged the exact same way that we would charge youth drop-ins. So if they had 30 kids coming in, and it's $22.50 for a 10 punch card, I'd charge them the punch card rate. I'd charge them that, bill them at the end of the month. So those are the different ways that the swimming pool are used by the swim teams. Did I capture most of that? So,
Yeah, and the only other ones would be when they have the regional zone meets, and then the state, every other year, we have the state meet up here usually at our pool.
they do pay.
Oh, we do pay, okay.
So NIAA, Donnie cuts us a check for using it for a state or a regional meet. So that is paid for. So there was a bit of a kerfuffle when the scheduling was going on and they were scheduling dual meets at the swimming facility. And those dual meets they'd bring eight different teams and have 4 different meets and have them all at the Carson Aquatic Facility. And at that time, I was charging the teams that weren't swimming against Carson. If Carson was swimming against Hug, I wouldn't charge Hug for that meet. But if the 6 other teams that showed up, I'd charge them a standard rate of, I think it was $100 a day. So I'd get $600 for them to come and bill that to that academic person. If it was Minogue, I'd bill Minogue. If it was Washoe County, I'd bill Washoe County. Lyon County, that type of thing. So we did have that set up, so we didn't have a joint usage agreement with those different school districts, and that's why I charge for that. I don't know if it's still going on like that, and Dan could answer that.
These fee schedules are exclusive of any use agreements.
Well, it talks about fee waivers for use agreements, and that's why there's a section, like if there's an agreement between like the Tiger Shocks and this, and then do they have to pay for the meeting room or, other things like that. So that is addressed. So if there's a use agreement or an agreement that would supersede the fee schedule, that agreement would take place. But that's where we address it in the fee waiver, so I think it's section 5 in the policy.
again, I guess I worry about transparency and fairness and that everyone is paying the same, so.
Yeah,
you
if
know,
you look
I-
at section 5.2, it talks about cooperative agreements. And the ones that are listed are typically, and I sent this out to the other department heads to, there might be agreements that I'm not aware of. And obviously, if an agreement expires or something in the middle of it, they wouldn't be afforded that opportunity. But it's about meeting space, and it's not for social events, and it's not for special events either. So just for meeting room, workshop, that community space. So that's section 5.2.
But all of those on 5.2, if I may, sorry. On 5.2 indicates to me it's a reciprocating agency, and I don't believe all of your use agreements are reciprocating agencies. Or is it reciprocating because you say they clean it up? I guess I could say
Well,
that.
5.1 talks about reciprocating government use. So that's a little bit different. In each one of these arrangements, there is some sort of like mutual benefit, and there is agreements in place. So and oftentimes these are hired by the city, and we have a partnership too. So like Nevada Land Trust is a great example, and they'll come help us do with workshops, but it's really for the city. But oftentimes we'll bring them in to do that. And then they're the rental. The Friends of Carson City Library, they're, providing, using this room, and they're, their sole benefit, just like the Parks Foundation, is to benefit the library. So those are those examples in there. If there's some that don't quite make sense, some of them are, and then I was pointed out today that the Carson City Arts Initiative, the city does have a contract with them, should they be included in this agreement. So I had Mark Salinas send me a copy of the agreement. I haven't read through it yet, so I just got it today.
Do the use agreements do not come before the Board of Supervisors, correct?
It depends on the agreement,
Right.
like the
Whether
Tiger
there's a
Sharks
lease.
agreement does go before the Board of Supervisors. The Carson City Arts Initiative, I think it's an independent contractor agreement, so it's signed by the city manager.
So maybe just a
Friends of
thought.
Silver Saddle, we're in progress of doing an agreement with them, for example, but that would go to the Board of Supervisors and then the Open Space Advisory Committee.
And maybe that's part of the discussion, that here it's saying the city will provide a 100% rate reduction. Should we just change that to may provide a rate reduction and not list the amount, so that we have opportunities to adjust accordingly, so that the policy is more, well, wait a minute, let's figure out who this is, and maybe 100% is not appropriate, because I really want to work on something else in these fees that I talked about too, is, and Jen mentioned it a little bit earlier, that we're in the process of having all of our assets, sounds terrible, assets assessed for their useful life. Where are they? When are we going to have to replace it? All these other kind of issues. And in this fee arrangement that they're doing, I'm really want to recommend a change in philosophy, but I'd like to see 10% potentially of the fees actually be carved out and go to an asset account that we in the city have established to go for the long-term maintenance. Because what happens is we can't barely even keep up with the year-to-year operations and things, and then there's no money for the ongoing. And so I don't have any problem with these use agreements and things like that, but it's not free. And I think by doing 100% waivers, it's not free. But maybe I would make things that you're still going to have to pay the 10% that belongs to the asset, because you're utilizing the assets that are deteriorating. So again, we might not want to charge government to government, because we're using their asset and deteriorating it also. But I'd like to leave this a little more open in the policy for review. I just don't want to say it's mandatory that every single one of them is getting 100% nothing. Because maybe we want to say, you're going to have to pay $5 a year
So you want it
per swimmer or something to help pay for the boiler replacement.
So for wording, are you thinking while the terms for each partnership vary, the city may provide a rate reduction
Right,
for
and we-
reciprocating
Uh-huh.
agencies?
Yeah, and then on a case-by-case, we really can do the individual negotiation during the agreement process. But that way we're not, well, and it almost says varies and then, but it says will, and will is mandatory, so I think we should take the mandatory language out.
Lori, do you want all these agreements to go before the Board of Supervisors, or would you be comfortable with, say, Jen or the city manager?
A majority of them will go to the Board of Supervisors. So like the Friends of Silver Saddle, the Culture and Tourism Authority agreement did, the Tiger Sharks, Nevada Land Trust agreements, Muscle Power went to the Board of Supervisors. The majority of them will. So. The Youth Sports Association also went to the board, and that's one that needs to be updated.
And I think there's probably, like you said, maybe there's more than there's listed here. When you
probably
find out,
is.
right? Oh, that's been in place for 49 years. Yeah. Anyway, it's just, these are just some of the general thoughts that came to me when I read through the policy, and then to determine, we call it level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. And I guess that's what started bothering me, is to say, well, if my goal is to get 100%, but I really can't get 100% because I waive half of it. Or 50% ends up getting waived of the overall answer. So on the final one, when it comes back to us too, maybe in April, when I'm looking at these, if I can see what level, so on your proposed fee schedule, that you would tell us this is a level 1, this is a level 2, this is a level 3, so we can understand the fees and say, okay, this fee was established to hit level 1, or nope, this one is a level 3. So I'm trying to, again, tie the policy and your fee schedule together. Those are my comments.
Any other comments or questions for Jen? Commissioner Whitfield.
Just a thought, ignoring the recovery part of this, but speaking to the amount of use that a particular facility gets, do we have facilities that are underutilized that would benefit from a reduced fee that would give them more use? And then the opposite side of that coin, are there facilities that are overused where we could charge more to cut down on these?
There are, and when we get to the fee schedule, you'll see where some of those are. But for example, the Fuji Park Arena, we're proposing a lowering of the rates there because that's underutilized, where the exhibit hall is booked solid at that same park. So has the opposite.
So we're trying to, I guess my question is, we're trying to take that into account in setting
Yes.
in trying to arrange new
Yes.
fees?
Yes.
Okay.
Are there more questions or comments on the policy? And then we can move on to the fee schedule if you'd like.
I think we're ready to move on to the fee schedule.
If you don't mind, I was trying to be respectful of the staff, so maybe they could go home. Could we start with the cemetery, and then we could go over that first,
Yes.
and then that way we can send Nick home to be with his kids.
Absolutely.
So as one of your added, Nick, you want to come up? This is one of your late materials, and Nick has done an amazing job at the cemetery, and we have just amazing staff that work there. We now have a clerical staff person that it's there 4 hours a day, Monday through Friday. We've never had that before. And adding that, and then we've still gotten to the point where you'll see in the cost recovery trends, we're now in the black, for the first time in I don't know how many years. So we're really improving our service levels, being efficient, but this is an enterprise fund and should think like a business. Legally, we should be covering all of our costs, putting money away for equipment, depreciation, repairing buildings, anything that Nick or Antoinette would need for that operation, we should have that. So maybe if you don't mind, Nick can walk us through the slate material so he can talk about the tasks and how we came up with the fees and what's entailed.
Before we get started, can you tell me when the last time the fees were increased, or have they been static for a number of
For the
years?
cemetery, 1989 was the last we found in the files.
To the extent of my knowledge, yeah, I haven't found any record of them changing since then.
Welcome, Nick. Would you introduce yourself and then tell us what you want us to know?
Thanks for having me. Nick Wentworth, Parks Maintenance Coordinator. I take care of the cemetery and most of the irrigation for parks. So there was a lot of questions. I think that some of the initial fee schedules were a little bit confusing, just the way it was put together. So I worked on this late material sheet. The side with the 5 bullet points is essentially the first 4 bullet points are all things that have to happen. That's what we do at the cemetery as far as equipment required for burials, all the grounds maintenance that we keep up on no matter what. The improvements are things that need to happen. We get potholes, the roads are in horrible condition. The 4th bullet point there gives you a little bit better breakdown of how many casket burials we do a year, how many cremation burials we do a year, how many hours, that's man hours of labor that those average. And then along with that below there's the grounds maintenance. And that's for the calendar year 2019. I pulled those statistics this morning and it's a lot.
Oh, thank you.
25 acres of dirt to pull weeds and spray weeds and leaves, and there's a lot of maintenance there. The 5th bullet point, long-term, is stuff that realistically we should be banking money for. We're gonna run out of lawn space for our veterans in the next 5 to 10 years. We don't have any plan of where they go. We should be taking care of the unmarked graves, kiosks, and signage just to improve user capabilities out there, equipment replacement. So that side of the sheet just covers kind of what's all involved with the cemetery and whether it's burials or ground maintenance or the future. The other side of the sheet breaks down what all is involved in a little bit more detail with a actual full casket burial. Helps to explain more why it can take up to 30 hours to do one, depending on the difficulty, things like that. The original proposal for price increase, I thought that was maybe the most confusing part because the items that you got are broken up or divided between, it's itemized. So you have a cost for a plot space, you have a cost for the opening and closing, and then you have a cost for, we're not changing the cost to purchase the crypt or vault or anything like that, but, so I put the smaller box there just because that shows you what a total package costs now, what percentage of increase we're looking for, and then what the new cost would be. So I think it's a little bit more simplified there. The notes on the right tell you exactly what's included with that. Those are all the services we provide or all the essential services I guess we'd provide. So if you walk in the door and you need to schedule a service for a loved one, you don't have to buy a flower vase. You don't have to buy the huge marker. These are the required items that pretty much everyone's paying for.
But we're not buying a marker from you, right? We're just
No.
buying the
You're
setting
paying
of
us
the
to set it.
marker.
They
have to still go buy a marker on top of this.
You can buy it online. We hand out business cards, but we don't provide those.
There were 2 fees that we left off the fee schedule that we needed to add. So we do have what we call the community tank. It's $150. You can place your ashes at the cemetery and there's a nice little garden around it. So that is an option, a very low cost option. That's where we put our indigent cremations as well. And then we also didn't list separately, I think we just forget about it, but the the veterans do not, they only pay for open and close only and to set the marker. The VA pays for their markers and there's sort of other arrangement with that. So I just wanted to be clear on what the veterans get, compared to everyone else.
So we give them their space for free, whether it's cremation space, which is smaller, or full casket space.
So veterans pay zero for a plot? is
For
what
the
you're saying?
land.
Right.
Yeah, more or less. So they pay for the excavation and burial, but there's also kind of an odd glitch in there that I don't know if we really even know the answer to, but we've given veteran spouses, they get to use the same plot, of course, but there's no payment for that. So that never gets charged. And we had this, it's only happened once or twice in the 3 years I've been there, but they'll come in and, not that I think it's maliciously, take advantage of the system, but come in and get a cremation plot, 4 foot by 4 foot. The spouse is buried for free. Well, the plot's free. And then they just get a memorial for the veteran. So the veteran doesn't even end up being placed there. They've kind of used the system to get a free space for the spouse, and then
Should say the veteran has to be,
Interred there.
the veteran has to be interred for, sorry.
And it's a small loophole.
No,
It's
but
not like
again,
there's
it's a
bunch
way
of
to
people
fix it
taking
in
advantage.
the procedure.
in the wording.
Right.
We could add language in the policy
Right.
about that.
Right, to fix it. Mhm. Mhm. Well, I don't mind jumping in a little bit on the casket, because jumping in the casket, I might, by the time I get done with this one, no. Part of the concern for me on this was I want to make sure that people don't feel that they can't bury their loved ones in the community in which they live because they can't afford it. And so that's one of the reasons we earlier had the discussion that the payment plan.
Right.
But when I started looking at what they charge, at the other facilities, it also looked like the city is forcing you to put it at a different facility. Right? Because if I'm sitting here as a family member, I'm going to go, well, I'm not going to put my family member there. I'm going to go, just from the example of this one, I'd say, okay, to put my casket in the ground, it's $1,600. Well, I can go to Walton's for $1,025. Why would I go to the city? So I wanted to make sure, again, that, and I get that it's an enterprise fund too, but we have to still be cognizant of this is burial services. This is something that,
Emotional time in people's
well,
lives.
it's very emotional for people, but it also has to happen. I mean, so it's a mandatory service of some sort. And so I didn't realize we had a community option that you're saying is only $150.
Yeah.
Okay,
So-
so that'd be no marker type thing is what you're saying.
So what it was I want to say it went in the 90s sometime or early 2000s. They actually installed a concrete vault that has just an access into the top of it. So they sign a release that there's no recovery, no discernment. You can't take them with you and move somewhere else. And so that's an affordable option. It's a lot less impact on maintenance and labor for us for the indigents. It's a great option there since the city's eating the cost of that, more or less anyways.
But they're marked in the records to say
They
that
can,
that
they can act,
body
yes,
is
it's
there at
recorded.
site SH or whatever.
Yeah, legally, we have to record all.
And you
placements
call
like
that one the
that.
community gardens? And you said it's $150?
Yeah, and they have an option. We've looked at getting a large marker like the uprights you see down by Roop Street, a large granite marker or whatever there, to where they could pay Cornerstone Monument or somebody to come in and sandblast or engrave the name on it, where we could do them small, but they could still be recognized and you could list the names out on it.
That makes me feel better than what I was looking at.
I think we've talked too about in the future doing like a kiosk, kind of like what Dave said, but in a cemetery application where
Can find
you
a
could pull
grave.
something up and you would know who is in that area, or let's find the veterans, or let's find whatever. And I think long-term, it would be a neat way to be able to find that.
Okay, well, that helps me. Again, when I just look at it, so on your cremation, I'm looking at, so I want you to know I'm actually reading what you gave to me here. So you're saying it's 3.8 hours is the labor that is associated with a cremation on average, right?
Yeah, and that does not count Antoinette's time in the office, but that is total time spent finding the plot, digging the grave, placement, service, and that gets averaged out. You get some, when you have the honor guard there and things like that, they can go on really long. Sometimes we just get deliveries or placements with no family. So
Right.
that's an average.
Well, I was just trying to get how you came up with $1,000. I guess that's what bothered me the most was the cremations. I'm like, how can that be $1,000? If it's 3.8, whatever, let's say it's 20% of what your time is on a casket that's 1,600. I don't know, I just thought that was too much.
Well, and that one, the $1,000 is on the lawn.
And 800 in the dirt.
Dirt plot would be 800. A lot of that goes into, 5.5 acres of turf, and we're here asking for, or we'll be at Board of Supervisors asking for a $25,000 lawnmower to mow that grass.
That's general.
The grass at the cemetery, the turf there, is one of the most labor intensive for maintenance because we can't aerate the same, we can't fertilize the same, we can't dethatch the same. We have to bag all the grass clippings so that the thatch doesn't build up. That's part of the reason why that mower's more expensive. Has to have a bagging unit on it.
I would just like us to look at the charge for cremations to find the less expensive methodology for the people in this community to bury their loved ones. If they want to choose the casket methodology, it's more expensive, that's the way it goes. But I just want to make sure that if they want an individual spot for their loved one, that it's affordable. And I like the payment plan option, so, I'm just thinking that that's just a little bit pricey. And maybe the rest of you don't feel that, but I think it's very pricey for a.
The price, I agree with you that it's pricey, and the other thing that's pretty glaring is the percentage of an increase, and could
Oh,
get there over time, and
Right.
not necessarily all
Right.
at one time. So.
Phase it in?
I'm just not comfortable in the cremation, and I just think we should recommend something else there.
I think it's really important to look at this at least every 5 years
Oh,
and
I
not
agree
wait
with that.
30, because this is what happens.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. Absolutely agree with that. I guess I would just be more comfortable, seeing that, at like $600 to be on the lawn and, $500 to be in the dirt. But it's just a thought. Yeah, something, again, I'm seeing two options, right? You're looking for the one that, if you really can't afford anything, you're in the community garden, and you can just do it with all the loved ones of our community there. But if you want the individual plot and you want to be in the lawn, because you do want a specific marker that's for just your loved one. So I would like to recommend that we lower those for the lawn and the dirt, for the cremations.
Can you repeat, it was $600 for the lawn, and what was the dirt that you were recommending fee?
So if we tried to apply the same percentage, so if we did 600, you guys for lawn, and then we,
Are
and then
you,
we did like 400 for the dirt, right?
is the fee, the 600 and the 400, is that for the plot only, or?
It's
okay.
for, this says cremation space dash lawn, we change 1,000 to 600.
Yeah, from 410 to 600 and from 185 to 400.
Commissioner Cartwright, would you like to jump in?
Yes, I would like to just totally blow up what was just stated.
That's okay.
Well, I was thinking about this, if we're talking about running it like a business, and you've got the supply and demand. So I have kind of a compound question. How much space do we have left in the cremation spaces, dirt and lawn, and the casket spaces? Do we have those numbers?
Veteran spaces are very limited. That's where we're running out of room the soonest. I would say 5 to 10 years. Non-veteran, open to the public lawn spaces. Maybe 400 to 500 full casket spaces. Typically, the way that it's set up, the cremation rows we do around the sprinklers, so that, because you have to be in, 10-foot intervals for different rows, you can use up 4-foot pieces for cremation rows. So that's probably similar number. I would say in the neighborhood of 500 or so casketing, and that's just a rough estimate in the lawn. In the dirt, there's quite a few, maybe double to triple that.
Okay, so thinking about, we want to keep it affordable for people, but we also want to make sure that people get their spaces. And can we look at a phased-in approach, like Commissioner, you mentioned it, right? The phased-in approach that was mentioned earlier, where once 10% of the remaining inventory, is that the right word here? Is used, then the price increases X amount until we get to this max level that you've proposed in these fees.
So as the inventory decreases, the price would increase.
And as you decrease an inventory by 5 or 10%, the cost increases because you're gonna run out of space, right? And then that might incentivize people to go and get their plot sooner so that they know, A, where they're gonna be, and B, that it's a little cheaper, and they can get on the payment plan sooner at a lower price.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think my only concern would be
Lot purchase, it's not this.
Oh, right.
would be to plan that,
Right.
the structure of that
Yeah, I get
to
what
where
you're saying.
you had the funds to expand before it was too late, before it was time to expand. You'd want to be recouping some of those
That
costs.
goes with my other comment of 10% of all this revenue's going into a fund for the long-term
Development?
infrastructure needs of all of these facilities.
Well, and as you expand, and that's
Right.
part of the current irrigation project, is to expand that to where, right now it can't handle what we're doing, but we want to set it up to where we have room to keep growing. With the cemetery is a little bit different because you have to look at the long term, that there's a point in there where you fill up and you don't have any room,
Then no
but you're
one's
legally
coming.
obligated to continue to maintain it. So they're beyond the just expansion in the future.
Just a quick comment. I just looked up real quickly the average inflation rate since 1989. Today's dollars, that's $1.89 is 2.25 today. So that $410 it turns into a little over 900. Just to put it in perspective a little bit.
On your report, it states that you did 38 full caskets and then 61 cremations. Do you see that trending, the cremations trending up and the full caskets trending down?
They have.
Yeah, so that the trending is you think that'll continue to grow on the cremation and the?
I know that has trended that direction for significant amount of time. These numbers are lower than what we saw in 2017, 2018, by not much, but
So that kind of plays into the point of us filling up and not being able to afford it. Well, if we're trying to see this as an enterprise account and people are trending up with the cremations.
you're gonna sell less and less caskets every
Yeah,
year.
and then our revenue's gonna be down again.
The majority of casket burials we do are the older generation and Hispanics. Yeah,
Got it. So just a point of reference. So
yeah.
the-
No, you're gonna sell less and less caskets every year.
Because I was just thinking, well, I'd rather be cremated than.
Any other questions?
Just-
Commissioner Whitfield?
Along to follow up with Kurt's comment, I did tell my wife I wanted to be cremated, and unfortunately, she made an appointment for me for next Tuesday.
Any other questions or comments for either Jim or Nick?
I just want to thank Nick for all that they've done at the cemetery. I mean, they've really turned that place around. I mean, not only financially, but it's never looked better. And then to have some statistics to be able to look at so we can make some thoughtful decisions is really helpful. And I just wanted you to know what the actual costs are. We're not sold on any of these fees. This is all just for discussion. We don't want to be inconsiderate, to what people are going through, and we want to try to meet everyone's needs. But I just wanted you to know what the true costs were.
So if the trend is moving to more and more urns, are you indicating that we could not take a casket area and redesign it to be
Oh, you
able to
certainly
double
can.
its use? So I don't want to, right, because then we could get
Yes.
two for, right, so
2 cremations for 1 casket.
space-wise. About,
Depends. People buy full grass plots and put 3 cremations in them.
right. But
They'll
I'm just
purchase the
saying,
plot at the.
right, and put
full
their whole
casket rate.
family.
But yes, we can easily take a 9 or
Right.
10-foot row and turn it into 2 4-foot
Okay,
rows.
that's all I'm saying is I don't want to, right.
Be
We have,
married
we
to the
have,
casket.
right, we don't have to be married to it and worry what we're doing there. Okay. All right, thank you very much.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
for the
Thank
good
you.
work, it's really helpful.
Do you want to walk us through the rest of the fees? The rest of the fees. Walk through the rest of the fees, and then we could start with aquatics. Is that where you want to start? Okay. Okay, no problem.
Go to the,
Ladies,
you can
room.
go to the little boys' room. Yeah, like.
I need like.
We're back, whoops.
Wow.
Now we're awake.
Whoa, is everybody awake now? All right,
5 more minutes, you got it, yeah.
you're giving me 5 more minutes?
No, I said in 5 more minutes. you got it.
Oh, okay. All right, so where are we, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen?
Aquatic facility fee.
Go ahead.
So,
Commissioner Cartwright has an observation.
thank you. Just in order to be respectful of staff time and our new members to the committee time so we don't scare them away, we thank you for joining us. I was thinking perhaps we could table this topic and call a special meeting before April or table it until April if that agenda is not predicted to be heavy, although with the Kings Canyon maybe being brought then it might be. But perhaps table this topic, come back when we're fresh at a special meeting and discuss the fees more fully over coffee and perhaps donuts that I will volunteer to bring for anyone who will eat them. And maybe we'll finish the rest of the agenda tonight and come back for fees another time.
That would be fine with the staff, and we can look at the availability of all of you and the schedules if that's the pleasure of the board.
How does the rest of the commission feel about that? Be okay? Okay. Lori?
I'll remain, I feel it is imperative that we at least give them overall direction or focus, however, because I don't want to just spend another, sorry you guys, but I don't want to come back and spend 5 hours to send them back again. So
Do you have
I'm not, well, that,
A couple comments.
and so maybe if I could be comfortable if we were giving them some general direction then and some stuff so that the next product we got maybe hits 80% of the mark. You know, like earlier where I said I want to see that these are level 1, level 2, level 3, some of that type of stuff. And so I want to see what the veteran added on, you know, because again, this is the charge, but there was a lot of discussion that we've had over the several meetings. We've had things come, like in the swimming pool, I can't remember, but we did something for free for veterans. I don't see that on here. Disabled
veteran-
American veterans, whatever it was, 50%, something.
I think we gave them like 100%.
100% at the pool, but there was discussion on whether we were going to do the MAC. So just veteran needs to be added into the fee schedule. I think she tried to already handle one of my questions a little bit over here because I was overall concerned, or I thought it was a good idea to do these annual memberships, but then am I actually going to lose money? Because how many people buy the 3-month passes? So it was at $90, it'd go to $103, but why in the world would you do that? You just pay $249, that'd get the whole year, so we're gonna actually lose money, but I don't have any. So those are the kind of answers I need them to come back and tell me. Don't worry, Lori, we only sell 10 3-month memberships, so it's,
That's probably fairly accurate.
oh, I might have it right? Okay, you know what I'm
membership-
saying.
Yeah, the monthly membership options definitely are not as popular as the Punch Pass option,
The Punch Pass is the number one big
for sure.
seller. So again, I just want to make sure before I'm implementing or looking at a fee that I have an understanding what the intended consequence or the purpose of it. So if that's the case, why are we adding annual at all? Because we're only going to sell 2? So I don't know. Those are just some of my overarching thought and comment, because where I really had it was in the grave sites.
area.
Oh, yes. I just feel very strongly there. And then the only other one that was of interest to me specifically was in the sports tournaments where there was no increases for facility rentals. And I'm like, wow, that's the only thing we're not increasing. And why not?
So some clarification on the sports tournaments. What, and Jen had alluded to how in the past there wasn't a lot of communication between different divisions. And so, and it's hard to represent how we're changing everything on a spreadsheet, but basically those fees that are listed there are what we were doing at Centennial Sports Complex that was run by the Recreation Division. And then both governors and Pete Livermore were doing a different system for reservations. And so while we're not necessarily changing the fees at Centennial, because those are that $500 to reserve the facility and $15 for the supervisor, that's the Centennial model. And we only have one renter that actually pays because everything else is CTA endorsed. So we didn't want to basically stick it to that individual, that group, right, for the one.
Okay.
But we are implementing that fee structure to the other sports complexes, so they're all on the same page. So that's the change that's happening there, is that before they would just charge per field usage, and now we're gonna say there's a $500 base rate to use the facility, and then there's gonna be a fee for prep and
This, that, and that.
lights, et cetera.
Okay.
But it's hard to explain all that in a spreadsheet.
Nope, I get it, right. It's like, okay, party of one, got it.
Commissioner Cartwright, and then Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you. And I think Commissioner Whitfield, you brought up a point earlier about inflation. So if we could see what the charge would have been if it had kept up with inflation from whenever the last time it was
Well, which
changed.
inflation?
I know with, that's a good point. Whatever one you fancy at the time of your spreadsheet creation. So just so we could see what it should be if it had kept up.
For every fee or for certain fees?
I think maybe
Most utilized fee.
You know we were recreation majors. I just want to put that up there.
See, I was gonna say, I don't know that I see the is that gonna make you change your mind on how much you charge?
More valuable than just showing the increase. If you show it
$500 and then 1,000, where's, you want to see the,
what it would look like with inflation, because right now we just see we're going from, $400 to $1,000 and it's 300% increase, but then we find out that inflation adjusted would have been a 400% increase. So it makes those percentages not so shocking because we haven't changed the fees in so long. If it's only valuable to me, I'll take the Excel sheet and do it on my own.
Just for the cemetery.
Right.
The cemetery was the only.
Because when's the last time you guys changed fees? It's not been 25 years.
it's been 39 years.
2009 for all of these
The
fees,
10
except for the cemetery, which was 1989.
Right.
There was one that was 90.
So, yeah, I would
So it's
rather
probably
see
fine.
staff's time with looking at maybe what other people are.
Well, that's why
Are charging
we've
more, but-
provided in the Northern Nevada region, Reno, Sparks, Douglas, Washoe, and Churchill for comparative costs. So we're not trying to be crazy, with some of our rates.
Withdraw my request.
It's that after 8 o'clock brain thing.
And then the only other thing is just a reminder that I would like to see in the policy or whatever and get just your general comment so that as they're going through to look at all these fees and take a final cut at them, the objective that I had of potentially taking 10% of the revenue that is generated off of the new fee structure will go to an asset recovery fund so that we can begin to have infrastructure money for our accounts. And so unless you don't want to direct them to do that, but I think that's something I'm very interested in instead of it just being a general fund revenue and we promised that as a reminder in the rifle range, we promised that the money was going to be segregated and used for the operation and maintenance of that facility. So I kind of in keeping want to say that 90% of this will go for operation and 10% will go for your long-term maintenance and infrastructure. So I don't know how else to start getting some money into the parks system to keep up. And I know everyone would laugh and say you could double all of these and we should probably put 100% in because we're so far behind, but at least we're making an effort to begin to fund, to fund it. So that was really all I had left.
Commissioner Meyer? You're chomping at the bit, I can tell.
Well, I mean, that would be easy to do in each department, because each department reports fees at the end of the year, and the 10% of those fees would go into a rollover account, such like do we still do that with tables and chair rentals and things like that, where we can replace the tables and chairs? No? Okay. So I digress. So there's just a couple things that I saw in the fees when I looked through them. One, on the aquatic fees, the way that these were set up, so that down the road, they're not all over the board, and they were set up in increasing the drop-in fee, and then building each and every pass off of that drop-in fee. So for example, a pretty easy example is that for the drop-in youth fee, it's currently $3. And the 10-punch pass is $22.50. Well, that's exactly 25% savings when you buy a punch card. And the same with the 30 punch.
So carry it through.
So that the math, I think, needs to be carried through. And in carrying that math through, you're not gonna see the different the percentages over here. So there's I created a formula for each one of those, so you would figure
the
out what the
ratios.
drop-in fee was, or excuse me, is going to be, multiply that times 10, times 75% is the cost of the 10 punch card. And that came from back in '96, I think, when Conforey Armstrong and all, we all sat down and we figured out a formula to make sense of the fees. And we've done that every year since, and this is kind of getting off that. And it's as easy as that, so.
Yep.
That was a comment on the aquatic facility fees, because I have a little experience with that. And the other one that I'm pretty passionate about are the youth sports and increasing the basketball over there. I think it should be decreased, in my own opinion, because to think that the family of 3 has to use a car payment to sign up their kids to play basketball for a season, it's just.
Where's that
it's
one
de-
at?
It's de- I just, it's almost, it'd be almost $100, so. It's under recreational programs, I believe.
Yeah.
And add page numbers, please, on the.
So under recreational programs, you have basketball at $60, but then what they do, unless they have one from last year, if I understand this correctly, is that they pay $25 for a uniform, and that uniform can be turned one way or another, so it's either white or blue, and they participate in the games. So that was we used to have when I ran this program a long time ago, we used to have sponsors, and the sponsors would pay for the uniforms
Yeah.
and have, Joe's Car Wash on the back of it, that type of thing. But then they went to this, so what's going on now is it's $85 a kid, and the suggested price is $95. And when I read that, little hairs came up on the back of my neck. So that's just my personal thing, and I understand that you guys gotta keep the lights on and pay the referees and things like that, but if there's any way that you can keep that at a lower, that'd be great.
So, you can tell we did do a cost comparison with all the other, and we are significantly lower on our youth sport fees than every other city. And we're also having to keep in mind that, over the next 4 years, minimum wage is gonna go up significantly, so we're trying to make sure we're staying on top of that. So that's the justification for that.
I understand completely, but I wanted to say what I just said, so I feel good about saying what I just said. It's way too much money for 3 kids in a family. I mean, one of the kids might not have to play, and I'd hate to see that. I don't know if we can somehow figure out, maybe with some kind of scholarships or things, something like that. Or maybe even drop that, this is an operational thing. Drop the whole, I have to buy a uniform thing, and give it back to the team to get a T-shirt. And in those T-shirts, usually it was, you got 10 kids on a team, and you went to Team Sport Inc., and he charged you $12 for a uniform. And anyway, those are just some ideas. I'm not doing this anymore. You guys have a different spreadsheet, and you're paying people and all that. I understand it.
And is there a discounted rate if you have 2, 3, 4 kids? Or it's straight for how many?
As of right now, we do not have a discount rate. We'd really like to entertain the idea of having a stronger scholarship program. It's just a matter of where does that funding come from to be able to offer those discounts. But I'd like to see that. I don't have like a secure sponsor that's consistent every year, or a way to be able to pay off those. But I'd really love to see a scholarship program for our youth sports.
Any other questions or comments? Jen?
What should we do? Our foundation, the Educational Foundation, we just started the scholarships for athletics and extracurricular activities, so it might be something that the foundation might want to look at.
Yeah, could we work with the Parks Foundation and challenge them to partner with us and find some donors to support a scholarship program for youth sports that the city sponsors and it's not covered through, YSA scholarships?
Absolutely.
And since I brought it up, poke me and I'll help with that. She just poked me.
Okay, there you go.
So you heard that. Kurt's going to be donating first to the scholarship program.
Time and treasure, I promise.
Jen, do you have enough from us?
Yeah, I think we've heard some great feedback, and thank you so much. I realize this is a very, overwhelming document to look at, so we appreciate you looking at that.
Okay.
Do you guys feel you need, I don't know that we'll need a special meeting.
Well,
Do you guys think we're at 80% with direction to her so that we don't need a special meeting?
I think as long as we're given the opportunity to, it's me, especially since this is the first time I've looked at it, just so and now I understand how it's coming,
Right.
to be able to call staff and give my recommendations that way.
Of course. I mean, email us. If there's other things that you realize, oh, I forgot to mention this, please email us, contact Dan or I, and we'll try to incorporate that in the next version.
So with that, I feel like we have what
I
I
would
need.
also suggest that maybe we have it placed higher on the agenda so that we can tackle it when we're a little fresher.
That agenda item's coming up, so.
Okay, yeah, I like that.
We're going to swap it around. Is there any public comment on this item? Apparently not.
Oh no, you can sit here like the rest of us, yeah.
So on that note, let's move to our staff update, and Jen's going to give us her director's report.
Okay, I'm gonna try really hard to be fast. So vacant positions, we have 2 maintenance worker positions. We have 1 person that transferred to Public Works, and we just received a resignation. So we did interviews yesterday, hopefully gonna get those filled soon. We have 1 park ranger position, Alan Biddle, retired, that we had 152 applications for that position. So Dave and the staff have been working really hard to get through that. It's a good problem. We're excited that so many people want to work here. And they're scheduling those interviews soon. Park projects manager, so that was the senior park planner position. We changed the title, the pay is still the same. And then just we reworked it because the job description was 20-plus years old. So we just made it fit our needs for today. We had about 35 applicants that met the qualifications. I'm narrowing that down. We'll get interviews hopefully scheduled soon. The rifle and pistol range improvements, the Board of Supervisors authorized over $810,000 for safety improvements for the rifle and pistol range. It's multiple funding sources, definitely leveraging every penny that we have. Quality of life capital, general fund capital improvement, and a Nevada Department of Wildlife grant. We started construction yesterday. Dave's been out there, range coordinators working on its 4-point engineering or construction. And there's 40 working days for the project. So working days are Monday through Thursday. So it's about 10 weeks of work, if you look at that. No, Monday through Thursdays is in the approved contract. Staff's working on standard operating procedures right now for the range and, working through, there's a huge to-do list for our range coordinator while we're closed. So a lot of things are happening. Also part of that NDOW grant is new signage for the facility. So you'll see that when that happens. And then we'll plan a grand reopening celebration at the rifle range and invite you all there. So we'll figure out what that looks like. We haven't figured that out yet, but we will.
An ROTC, yes, I think it would.
Sure.
I wasn't being a smarty, I was actually.
Yeah. You're on our planning committee. Okay. Anderson Ranch Estates Development. This went to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that it includes requirements for much-needed trail connection from the Mountain Street Trailhead. I call it the trailhead to nowhere right now. Will be the trailhead to somewhere. It'll have a trail connection from Mountain Street all the way over to Ormsby, which is great. And then it'll also have a decomposed granite, so dirt, loop system on the outside of the subdivision. So that's really great. And there are provisions in their conditions of approval that require neighborhood and park improvements at the Mountain Street Trailhead. They'll have to design that, include the public, and it'll have to go to this board for approval. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. I'm not sure what their timeframe is, but I would assume that you'll start to see something in the near future because I think they're raring to go with that development. Yeah. Yeah, which is wonderful. They were a great developer to work with and collaborate with that. They're really excited to do some improvements, and the trailhead right now is in disrepair, so it needs some attention, and they're willing to do that work, which is great. The Carson Ridge Disc Golf Course, we had a soft opening in late December. We'll do a big celebration in the spring when it's a little bit warmer, but I did want to let you know that it's open, it's available, it's free of charge for the public. It's a beautiful course. I've had my kids out there, and you see a ton of people in the parking lot every day, so it's definitely being used, which is wonderful. I did want to just thank the Eagle Valley Disc Golf Association for all their hard work, and then the staff. Between them and the staff, we had over 5,000 hours of labor that went into that facility. So it was grant funded, and from in-kind staff labor. So a really big project. The Nevada Recreation and Park Society, their annual conference is coming up in April. Staff is looking at nominating some projects for awards, for state awards. So we're considering Schultz Ranch Park in the neighborhood park category, the disc golf park, the ski and snowboard program, and then possibly Mills Park. They have a legacy park category for older parks that are really iconic and important in communities. So we're looking at that. If you have any other suggestions, let me know, and we'll try to get those nominations in. Prison Hill Recreation Area, we've had several public meetings about the motorized area, also the non-motorized area, what's the plan for trailheads. We've had, standing room only showing up at these meetings, which has been great. So we're hoping to have an overall Prison Hill master plan that we'll have at the joint meeting in June between Open Space and Parks, and we can really get that going, and then ultimately it would be approved by the Board of Supervisors. But I just wanted to make you aware of the time frame for that. The Roscoe Park Master Plan update, I just wanted to let you know where that's at, because we're at a little bit of a standstill. So this board approved recommended to the Board of Supervisors the update to the master plan. We acquired that land and some of the improvements with Land and Water Conservation Fund, so it has restrictions. I sent the updated master plan to the National Park Service that oversees that fund, and I'm just waiting on their approval so I can bring it to the board and then get authorization from the board to spend residential construction tax on the tennis courts and then move forward. So we're just waiting for approval from the Park Service, and it just takes a little bit of time. But I didn't want you to think that we had forgotten about that direction. And then Buzzy's Ranch, there was a complaint filed against the city. I just wanted to make you aware of it if you weren't already, about proposed third-party hemp farming at Buzzy's Ranch. The land was funded through State Question 1, and it was matched with Quality of Life open space funds. It is deed restricted. If you want a copy of the complaint, I'm happy to provide that to you. It's a public
It's actually a
document.
lawsuit. They've converted.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm calling it a complaint because that's what it says. That's okay. I know. And then if you want a copy, that's great. And then if you have questions, I would, direct those to the DA's office. But I just wanted to be transparent about that and make sure if you wanted a copy of that, we can provide that to you. And then if there's questions on any of the Board of Supervisors action items, just let me know. Sorry, that was long, but.
I'm glad to be back. I served on this commission 2001 to 2004, so it's changed a lot. Yeah, we used to sit down there. I was real surprised when got here. Yeah. Yeah, and I didn't have a free Tuesday for 3 years, except in the 5-week month. So I was really excited to see your meeting schedule. Probably the biggest news we have is we're doing our rezoning right now because our middle schools are, at least the one over here at Carson Middle is way over capacity, which means that we're going to be doing stuff at Eagle Valley. So we're having open meetings. Eagle Valley's meeting is February 12th at 6 o'clock at Eagle Valley. We have Carson Middle School's rezoning meeting next Thursday, the 13th at 6 o'clock in the library. And then part of the rezoning is all the Fremont fifth graders are all going to go to Seeliger is what's proposed at this point. And so we're having a meeting at Fremont on Thursday, the 27th at 5:30. So those are the biggest issues. 6 o'clock on the 12th. And anybody's invited to come if you're getting rezoned for Eagle Valley and want to come and see the building before, they're going to have tours and stuff, so. And that's all. And we haven't made a decision on the Snyder property, so that would impact here yet. So we're waiting. We have one more environmental impact study coming in, so. Thank you.
Invite any other groups and other people, maybe come do a little display. Anyway, just again, to get the community to park appreciation, but I have a cute name for it.
I think it's July 15th. I think it's July 15th.
That sounds right. Middle of it, yeah. Or middle of the month. But yeah, it's like on a Wednesday.
Jan? Just wanted to let you know, after our last meeting, wherein the residents of Kings Canyon invited me up to see all the activity at the trailhead, I've been going up in the evenings, and they're absolutely correct. It's a hopping place. I was surprised, you know?
Has been.
I was leaving at 8:30 one evening, and there were still cars coming up. It was like, whoa, wow. And then in October, with Jen and other staff members, I attended the opening of the Schultz Ranch Park, as did Lori, yes, and that's a great-looking facility. Yeah, you were, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You know, it's a nice park.
It is a nice neighborhood
It
park.
is. Very nice. You know, a lot of hard work went into that, and thank you to staff for taking the time to plan a park that not only the neighborhood out there, but the community here of Carson can use for quite a while. You know, good job. So, and then, let's see, nothing else? Then let's move on to future agenda items. Does anybody have any agenda items they'd like to see in the future that are not listed in our packet? Dave, you look like you got something to say. Okay.
I missed my chance to thank Jen and her staff
No, you can take it now.
for helping out with, they've already started work on the Mills Park tennis courts that we're going to try to refurbish for pickleball, which is great. They're starting to get some of the surface taken off, and that's a good thing. And we had a little fundraiser here, and we're closing in on $5,500 additional,
Excellent.
which will put us close
They have
to
about 10,000.
$11,000 now for our renovation, and we're barring unforeseen circumstances with the courts, I think we're going to be able to put some nice pickleball courts into play, hopefully by late spring. So
Excellent.
that's the goal. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other future agenda items? We're good? Any public comment?
So I just want to reconfirm that we're going to have the fee schedule at the April meeting for future agenda items because it's not listed on your proposed.
Okay.
At the top of the agenda.
We will put it at the beginning of the agenda.
All right, seeing as how there's no public comments, I'd entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second? All right. All in favor? We're adjourned.
No, you're not.